The man went to the hospital to have his 2 testicles removed, only to find out they cut the wrong ones. The cancer cells were still spreading throughout his body, but after finding out, instead of being angry, he clutched the peace charm his wife had left him and burst into laughter. Because the man felt that only this kind of death, one that left him without descendants, could appease his wife's departed soul. But when you opened your eyes again, what you saw was the dust-covered, double happiness character stuck to the window of your old home. Then, you quickly searched the house inside and out for a round and saw Lin Qingshu stark naked, curled up on the earthen bed. At this moment, her large eyes were filled with a deathly silence, and her originally fair, flawless body was covered in crisscrossing bruises. And seeing the woman who had haunted your dreams for half a lifetime again, you immediately became excited. You stepped forward and pulled her into your arms. There was too much guilt and longing to say, but at this moment, it all stuck in your throat, and then you wept aggrievedly. In your previous life, you designed a scheme to make Lin Qingshu fall into the reservoir, which led to the villagers seeing her disheveled after you saved her. For the sake of her reputation, she was forced to marry you. But since entering the house, Lin Qingshu never enjoyed a single day of good life, amidst your endless domestic violence. She jumped into the reservoir holding the child. It wasn't until your brother-in-law fished the bodies of the mother and daughter out of the river that you finally woke up. After that, although you used the opportunities of the era to earn wealth that couldn't be spent in 10 lifetimes, the woman who used her life to teach you how to grow was no longer there. Just as you were immersed in the joy of rebirth, a shrill cry suddenly came. "Get out! Don't touch me!" Looking at Lin Qingshu trembling all over at this moment, you remembered that right now, Lin Qingshu had borrowed money from her parents, home to buy a gift for the child. But you snatched it away to buy alcohol, and even got drunk, returning home to brutally torture her on the bed. Thinking of this, you raised your hand and fiercely slapped yourself over a dozen times. Soon, blood flowed down the corner of your mouth. Lin Qingshu watched your actions quietly and couldn't help but smile ironically. She couldn't remember how many times this had happened. After all, every time you sobered up, you would kneel and beg for forgiveness. But within 2 days, your fists and feet would fall on Lin Qingshu's body again. She could endure your torture on the bed with humiliation, but she couldn't endure the baby having nothing to eat because of hunger. The baby's weak crying brought a glimmer of life into Lin Qingshu's beautiful phoenix eyes. She hurriedly put on her clothes and picked up her daughter, but because Lin Qingshu was chronically malnourished, the little one, unable to get any milk, started wailing again. And the daughter's crying also woke you up. You immediately got out of bed and picked up the clothes on the floor. "Wife, wait for me. I'm going to get some food for our girl right now." Saying that, you ran with your long legs toward the small shop at the head of the village. The old man Huang at the shop saw you and asked with his yellow teeth showing, "What wine do you want this time, Uncle Huang? I'm begging for some rice cereal. I'll give you the money tomorrow." Old man Huang, hearing you wanted credit again, looked at the red and swollen palm prints on your face, said nothing, and took a bag of rice cereal from the shelf for you. You thanked him gratefully and hurried home. When you arrived inside and saw your wife was still just as she was when you left, your heart couldn't help but feel a sharp pang of pain again. "Wife, the rice cereal is bought back." Hearing your words, Lin Qingshu suddenly became alert, her pale little face full of terror. "I'm warning you. You are not allowed to sell my daughter. Otherwise, I curse your Zhao family to have no descendants." Seeing this scene, you froze on the spot, vaguely remembering that there seemed to be such an incident. Originally, you wanted to sell your daughter to a couple in town for money to buy alcohol. What kind of bastard things had you done? No wonder you died of testicular cancer in your previous life. You really deserved it. So you placed the rice cereal in your hand on the dilapidated small bed. "I swear I will never sell our girl. Tomorrow I will go to town to find work." After saying that, you turned and walked out. Coming outside, you fiercely slapped yourself a few more times. If you remembered correctly, it was in this month that Lin Qingshu jumped into the reservoir holding their daughter. Just thinking about this made your whole body shake. Seeing that it was getting late and the house was out of food, 20 minutes later you arrived at the foot of the back mountain, randomly pulled the elastic band from your underwear and made a slingshot. Snap! You fired a stone, and a turtle dove flapped its wings and flew up. In your last life, after you became successful, you fell in love with the sport of shooting and had played with slingshots for a while. After crouching in the grass for a long time, you finally caught a pheasant with a net and hit a few turtle doves with the slingshot. The turtle doves were very small. 4 together weighed only about a pound or 2, but that pheasant was as fat as 5 pounds. You tied these things with vines and hung them on a branch, and just as you were preparing to carry them home, you suddenly noticed that the things behind you had disappeared. You were instantly scared into a cold sweat. Had you encountered a ghost? Suddenly, you saw a flash of light from the peace charm hanging on your chest. This was something your wife in your previous life had always worn close to her. It wasn't jade or plastic. It wasn't until she committed suicide by jumping into the river that she took it off and threw it by the reservoir. When you looked closely, the light of the amulet disappeared again, so you couldn't help but reach out to touch it. The next second you entered a space. Looking at the area, it wasn't even as big as your hospital ward. After testing it several times, you realized that you could go in by pinching the amulet and come out just by thinking about it. With this gold finger, you could make a comeback in this life. On the way home, many families were using electricity, but your own house was still lit with a sheep tallow lamp. The hardest years of natural disasters had passed, yet you were still living hand to mouth. You carried the things directly into the kitchen. After it was completely dark, you carried a large, sea-sized bowl of turtle dove soup into the main room. "Ching Shu, come eat. I made turtle dove soup to help you produce milk." After calling 3 times, Lin Qingshu slowly walked out of the inner room. Seeing the turtle dove soup served in the large bowl on the table, she did not rush to approach. She just stood there, her eyes full of hatred. At this moment, looking at your wife wearing clothes full of patches, your heart felt another pang of sorrow. In this era of material scarcity, Lin Qingshu's appearance was exceptionally outstanding, but you were just a scoundrel who got her but didn't cherish her. Seeing her full of defensiveness now, although you longed to sit down and eat with her at the same table, you also understood that if you were there, she definitely wouldn't move her chopsticks. "I'll go eat in the kitchen." After saying that, you turned and walked out. Lin Qingshu stood there, staring at the large bowl filled with turtle dove meat soup. A sense of unreality rose in her heart. Is this a dream, or is this a final meal? Usually, if there was even a bite to eat at home, you would eat your fill first, and she could only drink the dishwater. So even though she was starving right now, Lin Qingshu didn't dare to eat easily. Not until she walked out the door and saw you crouching under the window drinking soup, with a large wild pheasant hanging on the kitchen door. Did she guess you must have gone up the mountain to hunt? Only then did Lin Qingshu turn back to the main room and start eating. After finishing the meal, under your wife's wary gaze, you took over the task of washing the dishes. You used to be a lazy man. This was probably the first time you seriously did housework in this home. After finishing these and thinking about the bastard things you did during the day, you boiled a pot of hot water and brought it into the room. "Qingshu, use this water to wipe your body." After saying that, you put down the basin and turned to leave quickly. After sitting at the door for a long time, a faint sound of splashing water finally came from inside. You were looking up at the starry sky, planning to find a way to make money tomorrow to improve the situation at home as soon as possible. It was already autumn. In winter, the temperature of 20 degrees below zero would turn dripping water into ice. Both your wife and child needed cotton clothes, otherwise they wouldn't survive this winter. After hearing the water stop, you stood up and walked into the room. Seeing you suddenly appear, Lin Qingshu was so scared that she ducked to the side. "Don't come over." Seeing this scene, you cursed yourself for being such a beast before, and also knew her heart's knot couldn't be untied in a short time. So you reminded your wife in a gentle tone, "I'm just taking the water out." After saying that, you picked up the water from the floor and walked out. Lin Qingshu ignored you and quickly got dressed as soon as you went out. In the yard, you used the hot water your wife had used to simply wash up. After all, you had been lying in the grass for a long time to catch those turtle doves. After washing, you sat on the threshold, reflecting on the experiences of your previous life. There was a time when several outsiders always wanted to go into the mountains to collect things. They were afraid of getting lost and found the idle you to lead the way. At that time, you thought these city people were just doing it because they were bored. After seeing their operations many times, you also knew how to pick those wild dendrobium. Now, you could completely go dig them to sell. Thinking of this, you instantly became energetic, tied a torch, prepared some non-professional tools, and said into the room, "Qingshu, lock the door, I'm going out for a bit." This going out lasted the whole night, and you didn't return home until 4 in the morning. Speaking of which, you were lucky. While coming down the mountain, you unexpectedly found a fruit civet nest and pulled out a few small ones that hadn't opened their eyes. Returning home and quickly processing them, you left one in the kitchen and then carried 2 baskets to the town. There was a market in town on odd-numbered days, so you found a crowded place and took the meat and skin of the fruit civets out of the baskets. Young man, nice mountain goods? You originally thought if you couldn't sell them, you would take them back to stew in one pot and share some with your eldest brother, second brother, and third sister. Unexpectedly, just as you set up, someone asked about the price of the fruit civet meat. An old man and an old lady saw you were a young fellow, tanned dark, looking like a mountain person, plus the price was affordable. They wanted 2 in one go. In this era, you still needed meat coupons to eat meat, so only this kind of mountain goods could be bought. Going back to give the grandson a treat. Before leaving, the old lady even tugged the old man's clothes and snatched up all the fruit civet skins, saying they were to make gloves for the grandson at home. In this way, in less than 2 hours, the fruit civets were all sold. Then, you took the big cargo you collected yesterday to the old established pharmacy in town. When you took out the item, the old man wearing thick glasses looked straight at it. He carefully took the big cargo, examined it closely, and then held out his hand to gesture a price. "Little brother, this price?" Seeing the price he offered, your brow furrowed slightly. This person took you for a mountain bumpkin to cheat, so you reached out to take your thing back. Seeing this, the old man reached out to press it down, then stroked his goat beard to appease you. "Little brother, if the price isn't satisfactory, we can discuss it again, right? 6 big 10 yuan bills can't go higher." Although this big cargo was accidentally stepped on and broken by you, its value was far more than this price. But since you were in urgent need of money, and your wife and child were still hungry at home, after a moment's thought you decided to sell. Then you went to buy meat and flour, and ran to 2 supply and marketing cooperatives before you could buy the milk powder that was rare in this era. Carrying it back, you thought of the old clothes with patches on your wife yesterday? So you walked into the only small, state-owned mall in town. On the way back, you made a turn to find a 70-year-old hunter, gave the person a bunch of food, and only then traded for the hunter's precious hunting rifle. In this era, eating meat required coupons. To achieve the freedom of eating meat, you still needed to do it yourself. Getting close to home, you finally found Lin Qingshu working in the field with the child on her back. Your eldest brother Zhao Zhengjing, seeing you walk over, was instantly furious. "Where the hell did you go again? Letting your wife work in the field by herself?" "Brother!" Looking at the eldest brother in front of you, your nose felt sour. "I went to town to work and bought some meat and flour back. Bring sister-in-law and the kids to my house for dinner tonight." Hearing this, the eldest brother gave you a suspicious look, scanning you up and down, looking at the mud spots on your pant legs and seeing the basket was full. "Your sister-in-law just made a pot of cornmeal buns at noon. Let your wife take a few back later. We won't go over. You work hard and treat your wife well." So you didn't say anything more. You nodded and carried the things home. To coax your wife, you must first coax her stomach. Just like that, you began to get busy in the kitchen. By the time it was nearly dark, Lin Qingshu came home carrying several cornmeal buns. However, just as she walked into the yard, she smelled the aroma of meat from the kitchen, so she quickly came to the kitchen door and saw you standing in front of the simple stove, busy working. Lin Qingshu had been busy all day and was already starving. After putting the cornmeal buns away, she went into the bedroom and placed the sleeping baby on the small bed. Just as she turned her head and saw a can of milk powder on the table, the blood rushed to Lin Qingshu's brain. She ran into the kitchen and raised her hand to give you a slap. "Did you run off to force my mom for money again? How can you be so bastard-like?" Being suddenly reminded of this by your wife, you gradually remembered that you, this scoundrel, had indeed threatened your mother-in-law with a knife for money before, so you quickly spoke to deny it. "I didn't. This is all money I earned today." As you spoke, you hurriedly reached toward your crotch. Seeing this scene, Lin Qingshu was even angrier. "What time is it, and you're still thinking about that?" Immediately, she stepped forward and gave you another big slap. Getting slapped twice in a row made you between tears and laughter. Seeing Lin Qingshu had no intention of stopping, you hurriedly pulled out 5 big 10 yuan bills hidden in your crotch. Wife, this is the money I earned today. You take it. Lin Qingshu, seeing those few big bills forced into her hand, felt her head spinning. Seeing your wife about to fall, you reached out to support her, but you were fiercely slapped away by Lin Qingshu. She couldn't believe that an idle fellow like you could earn so much money in a day. What kind of shady business had he done outside? How could life go on? Seeing that Lin Qingshu didn't believe your words at all, you almost knelt to her. I went up the mountain last night to pick wild dendrobium and happened to come across a fruit civet nest. Those things were exchanged for 6 big bills. I spent one on food and now these are all that's left. Hearing dendrobium, a bit of spirit returned to Lin Qingshu's eyes. Quote, ginseng in the north, dendrobium in the south. That stuff had high medicinal value and could be sold for money, but they all grew in deep mountains and were hard to find, let alone in the dark of night. But thinking carefully, there were indeed bloodstains by the well this morning, and fruit civet meat was stewing in the pot. Had she really wronged him? But how did he know dendrobium? Under Lin Kingsort's gaze, you raised your right hand and swore, I really didn't do anything bad. Otherwise, I'll have no descendants. Seeing your wife's breathing stabilize and her eyes become less fierce, your heart felt a sense of relief. Qingshu, hurry and put the money away. I'm going to send some meat to eldest brother's family so they can have a taste. Although hiding the money in the space was safer, giving the money to your wife meant handing over the power of the household. Then you picked up a plate of stir-fried fruit civet meat and the stewed crucian carp and tofu soup, placed them on the table in the main room, and then went back to the kitchen to fill a large bowl of meat to walk towards your eldest brother's house. On the way, you also paid back the rice cereal money and the previous wine money you owed to old man Huang. Lin Qingshu, meanwhile, stared at the big bills in her hand and hurried back to the room, married for over 2 years. It had always been you extorting money from her. This was the first time you actively handed over money, so she split the money into 5 parts and hid them separately. After finishing this and hearing steady footsteps from outside, she walked out of the room and looked at the 1 dish and 1 soup steaming on the table. For a moment, she was a bit dazed. Then she glanced at the kitchen. The flour bin was more than half full, the oil jar was full, and a slab of pork belly weighing over 12 pounds was hanging from the roof beam. Had he really changed? At this moment, Lin Qingshu wasn't sure. After all, a dog can't stop eating dung. Seeing Lin Qingshu sit down, you added a pheasant leg to her bowl. I'll go up the mountain early tomorrow. Before winter comes, I'll quickly pick all the places where dendrobium can be dug. After all, this is the fastest way to get money right now. When the whole country opens up, I'll take the money to invest in other things. Hearing your words, Lin Qingshu froze for a moment and nodded, saying nothing. Last night he must have had dogshit luck to step on 1 dendrobium. How could he be that lucky every time? Lin Qingshu wanted to remind you that if you really wanted to make money, you should find a job. Even if it's only a few cents a day, it's better than no income. But thinking of your temper, as long as you didn't go out to gamble or drink, she'd let you be. She held the chopsticks, wanting to put the pheasant leg back. But seeing her like this, you quickly used the child as an excuse to stop her. Wife, you are too thin. Eat more, or the child won't have any milk. No matter how good milk powder is, it can't beat breast milk, and milk powder is expensive and hard to buy. This is called crucian carp and tofu soup. Drink it to help produce milk. These words made Lin Qingshu glare at you, her knuckles turning white from gripping the chopsticks. But she didn't refuse again. Today you had been busy for a day and a night. Tired and sleepy, the livelihood problem of the family was finally solved. After filling your stomach, you said directly, Wife, I'm going to sleep first. Saying so, you stood up, bent over into the inner room, and fell asleep as soon as your head hit the pillow. When Lin Qingshu finished washing the dishes and returned to the room, seeing the clothes you took off on the floor, she frowned, then picked them up and washed them by the moonlight. After finishing, she dragged her tired body back to the bedroom, and her foot accidentally kicked a basket. Lin Qingshu picked it up to look. It was actually a set of brand new women's clothes and 3 sets of small clothes for a baby, so she stared at the sleeping you for a long time. She couldn't quite understand this person. This sleep of yours was deep and long. During the night, the daughter woke up twice, but it didn't manage to wake you. Not until early morning did you dizzily open your eyes. Turning over, you saw Lin Qingshu curled up with her back to you. She was only wearing a ragged small tank top which made your mouth water. After all, after Lin Qingshu died in your last life, you never sought another woman. So you reached out and pulled the person into your arms. All of this felt as unreal as a dream. Just as you wanted to lean down for a kiss, the wife in your arms suddenly went stiff, clearly resisting your touch, so you suppressed the bitterness in your heart and rolled out of bed. For now, you could only endure a little. Taking the clean clothes from the drying line, you didn't care that they weren't dry and slipped them on quickly, then tiptoed to take the things out of the basket and put them on the table. At this time, Lin Qingshu sat up on the bed and said coldly to you, "If you really want to change, find a job. As long as you are willing to work, you can get over 10 yuan a month and our family's life can go on." Hearing your wife take the initiative to speak to you, your heart was overjoyed, knowing Lin Qingshu was considering for you. But since God gave you a chance to live again, you had to save enough startup capital by the time of the full opening. In the previous life, after the mother and daughter left, you wandered outside like a stray dog. Later, you met a benefactor and had the chance to be a waiter in a state-owned store. Because your mouth was sweet and you knew how to talk, you were gradually promoted to manager and thus had the chance to cross circles and contact those big figures. In this life, you would rely on your own hands to earn the first bucket of gold as quickly as possible. Hunting and picking dendrobium were the fastest ways to make money now. More importantly, you now possessed the memories of your previous life and knew exactly where the dendrobium was. How could you let such a good opportunity go? It's just that right now, you didn't know how to explain to your wife why you insisted on going up the mountain. Lin Qingshu, seeing you remain silent for so long, knew your stubborn donkey temper was up again. So she simply pulled up the quilt and lay down again. There are cornmeal buns left for you in the pot on the kitchen stove. Hearing her words, you saw her face was full of unconcealed care. Then you came to the bedside and kissed Lin Qingshu's cheek. "Wife, I talked it over with my eldest brother yesterday. You don't need to go help them out today. When you have time, send half of the pork in the kitchen to my mother-in-law." Lin Qingshu, seeing you approach, thought you were annoyed and going to hit her again, but she didn't expect to be sneak attacked by you. She didn't even hear what you said, nor did she see you kiss the daughter before you left. By the time she snapped out of it, you were long gone. In the dim room, only she and the daughter sleeping in the small bed were left. Although it was still early, she tossed and turned and simply couldn't fall back to sleep. She lay on the bed until the sun was high, then heard someone knocking on the door. "Second sister-in-law, is there something this early?" Liu Giwa's eyes were darting around the kitchen, laughing very flatteringly. "Fourth brother's wife, I heard from the eldest sister-in-law that your family had meet last night. Did your fourth brother win big at gambling?" As she spoke, without waiting for an answer, her feet seemed to have eyes as they poked toward the kitchen door. My goodness, could this fourth brother have gone to steal or rob? How much money would such a big piece of meat cost? Her family hadn't seen meat for half a year. The kids had been crying for days and she couldn't bear to buy any. Finally, pulling her eyes away, she caught sight of half a pheasant hanging on the black wall. She instantly became unsettled. "Fourth brother's wife, you better watch out. If your man gambles, he might end up in labor reform." Hearing her say this, Lin Qingshu's face darkened bit by bit. "Second sister-in-law, what kind of talk is that? If he breaks the law, the police will naturally take him. You don't need to worry about it." Liu Giwa wanted to say more, but her eyes rolled as if she thought of something, and she swallowed the words at the tip of her tongue. "Don't be mad at me. I'm just worried about our fourth brother, aren't I? My man and he are biological brothers. My little treasure is crying for meat. Can you lend me 5 pounds of meat first? I'll have your second brother send you the money later, after living together for over 2 years. Lin Qingshu's heart was as clear as a mirror. She had long figured out what kind of person this second sister-in-law was. Once things entered her house, it was like throwing a meat bun at a dog, asking for 5 pounds of meat in one breath. Not to mention, she didn't dare take the initiative to lend it. Even if she had the authority, it would be impossible. "I can't make the decision on such a big matter. Second sister-in-law, wait for fourth brother to come back and tell him." Saying that, she walked over and bolted the kitchen door. Seeing her like this, Liu Giwa was very unhappy. "Fine. When he comes back, remember to tell him to bring the meat to my house." As she turned to leave, the smile on Liu Giwa's face couldn't hold. Meanwhile, On the mountain, seeing it was almost noon, you relied on those memories of the previous life and spent a lot of effort before finally finding a wild dendrobium. With yesterday's experience of working in the dark, by the time most of the dendrobium's root system was exposed, it was already getting late. This one was much larger than yesterday's. Not until the sky turned black did you finally and carefully extracted that large whole piece. Just as you were preparing to go down the mountain and return home, you turned around and bumped into a cicadere. It looked like it had come to nibble on the dendrobium S. Eyeing the situation, you quickly took the shotgun you traded for yesterday out of your space, and in an instant, the gunshot exploded through the forest, sending flocks of birds fleeing in all directions. Meanwhile, at home, Lin Qingxue had finished cooking. After warming the milk powder for her daughter and still not seeing you return, her brow furrowed. How can dendrobium be that easy to find? I still have to make him learn a craft properly. Just as Lin Qingxue was lost in thought, you quietly walked into the yard. It wasn't until you took the things out of the basket that Lin Qingxue inside heard a movement and walked out holding the daughter. Wash your hands and eat. After saying that, she went back inside with the child. You noticed your wife took a glance into the basket, but she didn't say a word. Once you entered the house and saw the steaming hot meal on the table, your eyes welled up. You wished you could go back to your previous life and beat yourself to death with such a beautiful and virtuous wife. How did you not cherish her properly? You walked to the table and sat down, devouring the food. Wife, I'll go to the village chief's house later. In a few days, we'll get the electricity wires connected for our home. Hearing this, Lin Qingxue's hand patting the baby paused, and she couldn't help but speak up. Getting electricity? But we'll have to pay the electricity bill every month after that. After saying this, she stole a glance at you, terrified that she would provoke you into flipping the table. You keenly captured Lin Qingxue's expression. Immediately put down your chopsticks and walked to the door to carry the basket into the room. Wife, this is what I dug today. I'll go to the city pharmacy to sell it another day. It should fetch a good price. Lin Qingxue stared straight at that dendrobium. She raised her eyes to look at you and asked in an unbelievable tone, "Did you really dig this?" Seeing this, you continued to explain. "I swear I didn't steal or rob. This is truly the result of me digging in the mountains all day." Seeing your honest face, Lin Qingxue nodded suspiciously. "Our second sister-in-law came by during the day. She wanted to borrow 5 pounds of pork." Seeing Lin Qingxue's long face, she was clearly unhappy. You guessed that while you weren't home, the second sister-in-law had given her a hard time. So you said with a serious face, "From now on, you are the head of this house. The money and things are all under your control. If you don't want to lend, we won't lend." Your words made Lin Qingxue feel uncertain. After pondering for a long while, she said timidly, "I don't want to lend it to her. She says she's borrowing it, but she definitely won't return it. It's not the first time she's borrowed things from us and not returned them." Hearing Lin Qingxue's words, a gratified smile appeared on your face, and you dotingly pinched her nose. "If you don't want to lend, we won't lend. We won't take any of her nonsense." Your smile left Lin Qing stunned. Then she picked up the daughter and went to the inner room. After filling your stomach, you washed the dishes, then cut half a pound of meat and went out into the dark. When village chief Wang Xuanzhu saw it was you, his old tan face was startled, but when he saw the meat in your hand, his wrinkled face bloomed with a smile. "Shen Guo, why have you come to see your uncle so late?" He took the meat as he asked. "I want to install an electric light at home. Do you have time to help arrange it?" "Sure, I'll arrange it for you tomorrow." You didn't stay long after hearing his words. You stood up, thanked him, and turned to leave. However, when you walked back to the kitchen, you actually saw Lin Qingxue in the pitch-black kitchen, gnawing on the meat bones you had left over. This scene pierced your eyes with pain. The blood in your body seemed to freeze, and then you said in a raspy voice, "What are you doing?" When Lin Qingxue heard your voice, she shivered with fright, and the bone at her mouth fell to the floor. Then she looked at you in the yard with a face full of terror. "Don't hit me. These are just leftovers you gnawed. I just felt it was a pity to throw them away." At this moment, you felt like a bolt from the blue. You had never felt so defeated. Suddenly, you fell to your knees in front of her with a thud. Lin Qingxue screamed in shock. "What do you want to do?" Lin Qingxue's eyelids lowered as she looked at the man kneeling before her, until she felt her chest soaked by something warm and wet. He was actually crying. Her long-closed heart seemed to loosen slightly, Seeing his wife so scared just from eating his leftovers felt like a knife being driven deep into his heart. So you stood up, held your wife's fair cheeks, and leaned down to kiss away the tears at the corners of her eyes. "Wife, go to the main room and wait. I'll bring the food in when it's ready. You are my great benefactor." Lin Qingshu didn't understand that sentence. She was so embarrassed that she fled the kitchen as if she'd seen a ghost. In the kitchen, you busied yourself for a while, and a fragrant plate of small fried pork slices came out of the pot. The coarse grain buns that he felt scratched his throat were treasures his wife couldn't bear to eat even a bite of. Just as you walked into the inner room, a snow-white, beautiful back came into view. In an instant, blood rushed to your abdomen. You couldn't help but step forward and pull the person into your arms from behind. "Wife, don't leave me again!" During the indulgence, Lin Qingshu felt for the first time that doing this kind of thing was actually so comfortable and pleasant. This was the first time since their wedding that the two had slept together so closely. Thinking about the scene last night, Lin Qingshu's cheeks felt hot as she turned her face and saw the child on the small bed. Her face suddenly turned pale with fright. It seemed she hadn't heard the daughter cry all night. Seeing his wife's sudden change of expression, staring straight at the daughter's side, you nimbly got out of bed and rushed to the daughter's small bed in a few steps. You saw the daughter was already awake, grinning with her two big eyes. At this moment, your heart softened as you looked at the girl. You carefully held the girl in your arms and returned to the bedside. Seeing that the girl was fine and still grinning, the big stone in Lin Qingshu's heart finally landed, and her tensed nerves relaxed. Then her eyes reddened, and she almost cried, feeling vexed that she could sleep so soundly last night. Such a small child. If something were to happen, how could she live? "Wife, you stay here with Niu for a bit longer. I'll go make breakfast for you." Saying that, you picked up your underwear from the floor and put it on. Lin Qingshu checked the diaper under the daughter's bottom. Although the wrapping was a bit irregular, it had been changed cleanly. No wonder she didn't hear the daughter crying last night. It turned out this scoundrel had gotten up to take care of her. This was the first time since the child was born that he had taken the initiative to care for her. So has he really changed? Can she believe him one more time? On the other side, you were skillfully busy in the kitchen. By the time your wife came out with the child, the meal was ready. Tofu, with green vegetables, cornmeal porridge, plus coarse grain buns shirtless. You took the child from Lin Qingshu's arms. "Wife, you go wash up first." Lin Qingshu was a bit worried, but seeing you clumsily holding such a small child, she let out a laugh. "This is your own daughter, not a tiger? Can she bite you or something?" During the meal, village chief Wang Xuanzhu arrived with the electrician as soon as they entered the yard. They saw Lin Qingshu sitting at the table in the yard eating, while you were wandering the yard shirtless, holding the child. He caught sight of a neat set of tooth marks on the inside of your arm and smiled meaningfully. "Jingguo, haven't finished eating yet?" You didn't expect Wang Xuanzhu to find someone so early, so you led the chief and the electrician to the door outside the yard to chat. Only after Lin Qingshu finished eating and went back into the house did you hand the child over to your wife. Then, from your loose underwear pocket, you pulled out a pack of Dakiamen cigarettes? The village chief looked at the Dakiamen cigarette in his hand, grinned with his yellow teeth and said, "You rascal, you've made something of yourself. A pack of these cost 40 cents. The electrician on the side laughed even more honestly, tucked the cigarette behind his ear, and carried the ladder around to the back of the house. This job was worth it. He usually couldn't bear to smoke 40-cent cigarettes himself, but this family was quite generous. Once the electricity was connected, you went back into the house. Just as you walked in, a piece of clothing flew at your face. Before you could figure out what was happening, you heard Lin Qingshu say, "Hurry up and put your clothes on. What do you look like walking around shirtless?" At this moment, there were several scratch marks on your back. Those were left by Lin Qingshu last night. The village chief and the electrician had both seen them, but neither spoke up. However, you didn't know anything and were wandering around shirtless, which made Lin Qingshu so embarrassed she wished she could find a hole to crawl into. She was too shy to remind you with outsiders around. It wasn't until after you went up the mountain that Lin Qingshu covered her burning cheeks and calmed down for a good while before she went on to take the bedding apart for washing. She moved the child's small bed into the yard, put the child in it, and was about to wash the bedding after filling the basin with water, when her mother came, carrying a basket with eggs and a small piece of meat in it. When Lin Qingshu saw her mother, she quickly wiped her hands and stood up. "Mom, why are you here?" Her mother took the basket into the kitchen, her eyes scanning her daughter back and forth. Seeing her ragged, ill-fitting clothes, her eyes felt a burst of sourness. She quickly looked away, picked up her granddaughter from the small bed, and said, "The family just finished their work. I came over to see you." As she spoke, her eyes surveyed the 3 dilapidated mud and thatch rooms. In her heart, she was constantly regretful that she shouldn't have agreed to this marriage. She had ruined her daughter. "Qingshu, Mom has thought it over. If you really can't live with him, then get a divorce. You're young and your days are long. Your life can't be destroyed by a rotten man like him." When Lin Qingshu heard her own mother's words, she was first stunned. She sat on the stool for a long time without saying a word. That day you snatched the money she had borrowed from her parents to buy rice cereal for the daughter just to buy alcohol. She truly felt utterly hopeless. She felt that being with you, she couldn't see any hope at all, and even thoughts of death surfaced. At that time, she wanted to jump into the reservoir with her girl. But after you sobered up, you were first regretful and slapped yourself over a dozen times, and then hurriedly went out to buy rice cereal for the child. After these few days, she felt you seemed to have truly become a different person. No more going out to mess around, no more drinking, no more gambling. Her mother, seeing her daughter with her head down not speaking, thought she was worried about the child and said, "If you want to take the child, Mom can help you raise her later." At this point, she hesitated for a moment. "It's just that if you raise a child at home, it won't be easy to remarry." In this era, divorces were few and far between. No matter how bitter or hard life was, women had to grit their teeth and pull through. Hearing her own mother even think through the matter of remarrying after divorce for her, Lin Qingshu took the child from her mother's arms. "Mom, I don't want a divorce for now. He seems to be slowly changing for the better now." As she spoke, she tugged at the brand new small clothes on the child. "These are the clothes he earned money to buy for the child. He bought a set for me too, but I couldn't bear to wear it." Her mother saw the long unseen red glow appear on her daughter's fair and youthful face, and her eyes seemed to light up again. She couldn't help but be dazed. She had clearly heard the aunt next door say yesterday that she owed 50 yuan to outsiders, such a large debt. And since he wasn't doing anything proper, how could he pay it back? It was precisely because of this that she felt uneasy and brought things over early in the morning to check. But seeing her daughter's expression, it didn't seem fake. If he truly turned over a new leaf, she would find a way to help him pay back that money even if she had to sell everything. Thinking of this, she didn't tell you what she had heard, fearing he would argue with you because of it. She gathered her thoughts. Her eyes reddened, and she nodded with gratification. "If he can change, that's good. Mom can rest easy then." As she spoke, she raised her hand to wipe the tears from the corner of her eyes. At this time, you, who just went up the mountain, were munching on a coarse grain bun, calculating how much it would cost to build a 2-story building now. Based on the price of the dendrobium you could dig now, after building the house, you could still have a very considerable amount of savings for this era. After all, there weren't many 10,000 yuan households at this time. Thinking that you would definitely stay in the village for the next 2 years, you wanted to improve the living conditions first. The 3 dilapidated mudrooms they lived in now. After entering, a man of your height felt like he couldn't even straighten his waist. Moreover, the dust inside was terrible, with bits falling everywhere. It really wasn't a place for people to live. At this moment, you had no idea that your mother-in-law was discussing whether or not to divorce with your wife. If you knew, you probably wouldn't have the heart to dig dendrobium on the mountain recently. After all, in this new life, making money was very important in your heart, but nothing was as important as your wife and child. You held the money-making secrets of the previous generation, so naturally, you weren't in a rush for this moment. Seeing it was almost noon, you didn't even bother to eat lunch and were anxious to return home, fearing that if you ate one more bite, your daughter would have one less bite. Lin Qingshu couldn't stop her, so she took the hanging meat from the kitchen, cut off a large half with one stroke, and chased her mother out. "Mom, take this back for my brother and sister-in-law to eat." When her mother saw such a large piece of meat, she repeatedly waved her hand and refused to take it, fearing that if you found out she was helping her parents, home like this, you would hit her daughter again, and even more afraid that her daughter wouldn't have enough to eat and would be wronged. "You keep it to eat. There's no lack of it at home. Look at how thin you are. You need to nourish yourself, otherwise where will the milk come from for the child?" Her mother ultimately didn't take that piece of meat and walked away step by step carrying the basket. Lin Qingxiu stood at the door, watching her mother get further and further away, until she was out of sight, before carrying the meat and turning back into the kitchen. Zhang Gilan next door was about the same age as Lin Qingxiu, but she had married 2 years earlier than her. Her skin was dark, and she was gnawing on a raw radish leaning over the wall. "Sister, you don't go out all day, but the news has spread outside. Your second sister-in-law was disciplined by your second brother last night." The crying and shouting were heard by several families. Lin Qingxiu, who walked out of the kitchen, sat on the stool in the yard, responding every now and then. Seeing she didn't talk much, Zhang Gilan pulled a stool and sat in front of her laundry basin, lowering her voice and saying softly, "They're all saying outside that the eldest son of your second brother's family isn't your second brother's." When Lin Qingxiu heard this, the work in her hands stopped instantly. She looked up at Zhang Gilan. "He's your eldest brother's seed." Zhang Gilan saw the confusion in her eyes, stuffed the leftover radish into her pocket, and whispered gossip in her ear with a face full of excitement. After Lin Qingxiu finished listening, her whole person was stunned. She truly couldn't believe such a thing existed. She used to respect this eldest brother quite a bit, feeling he was honest, kind, and fair, very much like an elder brother. But hearing this matter made her feel somewhat disgusted. How could it be like this? Zhang Gilan seemed very satisfied with her reaction, patted this little wife from the city, and said, "All right, I have to go home and cook for my man. I won't chat with you anymore. That night you came back very late. This time when you returned, you saw the light of the electric lamp from afar and couldn't help but sigh in your heart. The electric light was indeed much brighter than the sheep tallow lamp. Seeing you return, Lin Qingxiu quickly brought out the vegetables, kept warm in the pot, and the white flour buns, and casually asked, 'Why are you back so late today?' Noticing some mud on you, she put down the dishes and reached out to brush it off for you. You quickly stopped her, turned and bolted the door of the main room, and then dug something out from the pile of grass in the basket, carefully placing it on the table. Quote, 'Dendrobium. I came across an unexpected harvest on the way back.' You didn't tell your wife that it was because your foot slipped and you fell down that you bumped into this thing? It took a lot of effort to climb back up, which is why you were back so late. The price of this thing now isn't lower than Dendrobium. It's all sold by the gram. It counts as an unexpected small fortune. You were planning to have a good intimate time with your wife tonight and not go to the mountain tomorrow. But first, go dispose of the goods in your hand." Lin Qingxiu looked at that dark brown ginger-shaped thing he placed on the table. It seemed she had seen it in a book and asked with uncertainty, "Is this Polygonum multiflorum?" Her tone carried disbelief. You didn't expect your wife to be so knowledgeable. Most people in the village still didn't know how precious this stuff was. Otherwise, with so many treasures on the mountain, wouldn't they have been scavenged clean long ago? Dendrobium and Polygonum multiflorum would still be precious for another 10 years or so. Later, once cultivation technology improved, these could be grown artificially, becoming common in the market and no longer rare. But even then, the price of wild rare medicinal materials remained ridiculously high because wild ones simply couldn't be bought. You grinned with your white teeth, pulled your pretty wife into your arms, and leaned down to give her a peck on her fair cheek. Meeting her bright eyes, you said, "Right! It is Polygonum multiflorum. Tomorrow I'll take you and the baby to the city for a stroll and sell these treasures to the pharmacy while we're at it." As soon as she heard about taking the baby out, Lin Qingxiu's body suddenly went stiff. She remembered him saying before that he wanted to sell the daughter to that family in the city who couldn't have children. Her heart was still terrified. Who knew if they really couldn't conceive, or if they were buying her to be a child bride? She broke free from your arms and refused with defensiveness and alertness. "She's still small, we two won't go. You hurry and wash your hands to eat." You saw clearly that your wife was not right. You originally wanted to take her out for a stroll and buy her some winter clothes, but seeing her alert again, she was clearly afraid you were plotting against the daughter again. With those bastard things you had done, how could it be so easy for her to let go of the knot in her heart? The trust had already been overdrawn. It could only happen slowly. Taking off your shirt with mud spots, you opened the door and went out to simply wash your face. Then came back and sat down. Only then did you see the food on the table. A plate of golden scrambled eggs and a small plate of the small fried meat left from the morning. Had she not even eaten any vegetables for lunch? If she kept being so frugal, when would you ever nourish her to be plump? It seemed you had to quickly earn more money to make her feel at ease. Wife, where did these eggs come from? Lin King Shu lowered her head to serve you a bowl of porridge. My mom came by not long after you left. She brought them. She didn't mention a word about her mother bringing up divorce. As soon as you heard it was brought by your mother-in-law, thinking of the times you asked her for money to drink, you felt so ashamed you couldn't face her. You didn't even ask what the mother-in-law came for. You were calculating in your heart that when you sold the things in your hand tomorrow, you would first pay back the money you took from the mother-in-law before. You reached out to pull your wife to sit down. Hurry and eat. As you spoke, you handed her a coarse flour bun. Your wife still couldn't bear to steam pure white flour buns. She made coarse buns mixed with half white flour. You yourself picked up a cornmeal bun and devoured it. Lin Qingshu took a small bite of the coarse bun, looking up to steal a glance at the man in front of her. How good it would be if he could always be like this. It's just that she didn't know how long this burst of enthusiasm of his could last. Just as the two were eating, a voice calling at the door rang out. "Fourth brother, Early Yuzi is coming out. We're one short for a game. The brothers are waiting for you to drink and play cards." Hearing this voice, Lin Qingshu's face turned pale instantly. Her eyes stared straight at him, afraid you would go out with him to drink and gamble again like before. You were stunned for a moment hearing the voice, then remembered who it was. You put down your chopsticks and looked up. Seeing your wife's pale little face, you quickly got up and pulled her into your arms. "Wife, what's wrong? Where do you feel unwell?" Your tone was full of worry and tension, tucked into your arms. Lin Qingshu's slender, fair fingers tightly gripped the small tank top at your chest, her lips trembling slightly. "Are you going to go drink and play cards with them again?" Hearing this, you finally understood why your wife was like this. It turned out she was afraid your old habits were acting up. Your chin rested on her soft hair, and your arms involuntarily tightened, holding her even closer. The body in your arms was terribly thin. After marrying you, she hadn't lived a single good day, and even a full meal became a luxury. Yet even so, she actually still held hope for you, wanting to live a stable life with you. You took a deep breath, forcing back the sour heat in your eyes, and spoke in a low, raspy voice to comfort her. "Don't worry, I won't go. I'll drive him away right now. I won't mess around with him ever again." Lin Qingshu, sitting sideways in your arms, after hearing these words of yours, raised her face and stared straight at you with a scrutinizing gaze. "Truly not going?" You lowered your gaze, meeting your wife's uneasy and scrutinizing eyes. You truly wanted to pull your heart out for her to see, to tell her you had really turned over a new leaf. You couldn't help but give another peck on her pert nose, exhaling clean and hot air, and promised, "Truly not going, don't worry, I'll tell them to get lost right now." Then you gently placed your wife back on the stool. "All right, you go on eating, I'll be back right away." You straightened your waist and found that your small tank top was still tightly gripped in your wife's hand. If you didn't know that the three guys outside were no good, you really would have wanted to take her out with you, letting her watch you reject them so she could have some peace of mind. You leaned down and gave another kiss on the top of her head as comfort. Your rough, large, warm hand gently patted her thin back, and only then did she slowly let go. You straightened up and walked out with vigorous strides, coming to the gate of the yard and opening the wooden door. The several people at the door saw you come out. That fella called Erliuzi smiled shiftily and made a lewd joke. "Fourth brother, this isn't right of you. Sister-in-law just finished her confinement not long ago, and you can't get out of bed? It's been several days and you haven't come to find us brothers for a drink." Hearing those bastard words, your sharp brows were filled with hostility, and you roared with your whole body. "Damn it, from now on keep your mouth clean when you talk to me. If you can't talk, then shut your stinking mouth for me." The other two were originally laughing along, but seeing your face wasn't right, they immediately pulled back their smiles and hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "Fourth brother, he just has a loose tongue. Don't take it to heart. Come on, let's brothers go have a drink." As he spoke, he reached out to put his arm around your shoulder. You raised your hand and brushed away his arm, your peripheral vision darting to the other two. "If it's about drinking and gambling, don't come looking for me anymore. I've quit." Seeing your stance, the three looked like they'd seen a ghost. You looked at me and I looked at you. That Erliuzi, still with a wretched smile on his face, continued to tease without fear of death. "Fourth brother, are you being tangled by the little sister-in-law so much you can't get out of bed? Since she's out of confinement, Let the brothers have a try too." Before he could finish his words, you kicked him right in the chest, kicking him so he fell flat on his back, groaning on the ground. With a large stride forward, you stepped between that guy's legs and leaned down, your dark eyes flashing with ruthlessness as you stared straight at the bastard on the ground. "If you ever dare to spew filth again, I'll sew up both your upper and lower mouths and then break your third leg." As you spoke, you added a bit more pressure with your foot. Liuzi lay on the ground, ignoring the pain in his chest, and desperately pushed against your large foot on his crotch with both hands, wailing at the top of his lungs. "Fourth brother, I was wrong. I'll never talk nonsense again." The two next to him were scared out of their wits by this scene and couldn't speak for a long time. You were exuding a murderous aura that appeared very terrifying in the night, and no one dared to come forward to mediate. Since childhood, they had been afraid of this guy. When this guy fought, he was a ruthless character who didn't care for his life. But today was the first time they saw that just by moving, he was like a hungry tiger about to eat someone, making one's spine chill. You were afraid Liuzi's blind shouting would bring your wife out. You didn't want your wife to see this violent side of you, lest it scare her. It would be a disaster if he made her afraid of you again because of this trivial matter. You straightened your body, glared down at Liuzi on the ground, and pulled your foot back. Scram! Those two were as if granted a general pardon. They quickly propped up Liuzi, said, "Fourth brother, then we'll leave first to you," and left. Once those three left, you pulled back that burst of force, walked into the yard and bolted the door, Lin Qingshu inside, ever since you went out. Restless and as if sitting on a bed of nails, every minute and second felt agonizing. Seeing that you hadn't returned for a long time, her heart nearly turned ice cold. Clearly, her stomach was growling with hunger, but seeing the steaming hot meal on the table without you there, she couldn't swallow a single bite. In just these few days, watching you gradually change for the better, hope had unknowingly ignited in her heart again. She didn't expect him to be wealthy or powerful. She just hoped he could live a stable life, and that would be enough. But if he ran off again to drink and gamble, what would she do? The child was still so small, and there was no way to take the baby out to work. Was she really going to have to get a divorce? Just as she was lost in thought, she heard a steady set of footsteps, and her eyes involuntarily drifted toward the direction of the sound. She saw his tall figure walk in from the moonlight. At this moment, Lin Qingshu's originally lifeless eyes suddenly had light. He actually really didn't go out to mess around with those bastards? While she was still dazed, you had already walked up behind her. You leaned over to pull her into your broad embrace and lowered your head to kiss her fair cheek. "What's wrong? You don't recognize your own man just because I went out for a bit?" As you spoke, you placed the chopsticks in her hand, sat at the table, picked up a cornmeal bun, and began devouring it. Lin Qingshu still hadn't quite reacted and asked subconsciously, "Are you really never going to mess around with them again?" Reporting to the lady wife, "I've cut them off completely. I won't play with them anymore." Only then did Lin Qingshu nod and begin to eat slowly. While eating, she occasionally stole a glance at her man, seeing that although you ate quickly, your manners weren't bad. Paired with that sharp-featured handsome face, it was actually quite pleasant to look at. Originally, aside from the fact that he had saved her life, part of the reason she married him was because he looked upright. She was blinded by his appearance back then. And plus the need to exchange marriages for her brother, she married the penniless you. Seeing his wife staring at him in a daze, not knowing what her little head was pondering, you added a piece of golden egg to her bun and teased with a grin. "Wife, hurry and eat. Later on the bed, I'll let you look as much as you want." Your nonsense brought Lin Yangzuo back to her senses. Looking at your cheeky manner, she gave you a fierce glare, then lowered her head with a red face and buried herself in her food. After eating your fill, you weren't in a hurry to leave. You crouched on the rickety stool, staring straight at your wife, liking her more the more you looked. Clearly, in this era of material scarcity, the food was poor and there were no cosmetics, yet her skin was still as smooth and silky as cream, prettier than those stars who got injections. You noticed your wife's hand holding the chopsticks had red knuckles, so you grabbed her slender wrist and pulled it toward you, thinking of the bedsheets drying outside. You planned to sell the goods in your hand tomorrow and get a washing machine voucher from the black market. In this era, many people still didn't know what a washing machine was, let alone wanted to spend money on one. With a washing machine, his wife wouldn't have to scrub clothes by hand anymore. Lin Qingshu pulled her hand back, feeling truly embarrassed by your staring. "If you're full, go boil some water and wash up. You're covered in mud. You stood up, gave your wife a kiss on the cheek, and went to the kitchen to boil water. After you left, Lin Qingshu put down her chopsticks and touched her burning cheek. This person, since last night, loved to hug and hold her, and even kissed her from time to time. Every time he got close, she could smell the pheromones on him, making her heart feel like a rabbit was kicking inside, thumping wildly. She couldn't even figure out why herself. After finishing the meal, you pulled Lin Qingshu along, saying you wanted to take her for a walk to digest. On the way back, you didn't head straight home but led Lin Qingshu in a different direction, a dilapidated mud hut next to the cowshed, with a simple earthen stove outside. The woman inside was clutching her chest and coughing incessantly. She scooped out a small handful of corn grits, added water, and put it into a chipped ceramic jar. With just those few movements, large white beads of sweat rolled down her forehead. Heartbroken, a man with half-white hair strode over from not far away. He frowned as he took the water ladle, told her to go back to the room and lie down, and said he would cook. The woman looked at him, and the man handed over a half piece of pancake he had traded for. I had good luck today. I traded for a pancake. I ate half and brought the rest back. Eat it quickly. You'll get better faster if you eat. Have you eaten? The man didn't hesitate for a second, added a handful of rice to the jar, squatted down to start the fire, and said, I've eaten. The woman thought of her own body and handed the pancake back. I'm not hungry. You eat it all. I've been lying down half the day and just want to drink something thin. The man kept his head down, lighting the fire. If I tell you to eat, you eat. How can you get better without food? The man kept his head low, his eyes sour. If they ate their fill today, what would they eat tomorrow? He didn't care about his own body. That bit of rice was something he had begged from several villagers. He felt for her working all day without food, and she felt for him suffering with her in the countryside. He clutched her hand. Don't think so much. Rest and recover with peace of mind. Tomorrow, I'll go find medicine for you. It can definitely be cured. Lin Qingshu felt uncomfortable watching this. On the way back, she asked you about those two. You were somewhat silent. How could you explain that you weren't familiar with that man either, but you had seen him on TV in your last life? The old man had dominated the business world for many years, and after his death, he donated his entire fortune to establish a medical rescue charity foundation in his wife's name. His life's greatest regret was not protecting his love, watching her pass away under the torture of illness. Based on your memories, you guessed that the illness that caused his wife's death should be this very one. However, you estimated that the wife's illness was mainly caused by malnutrition. In a drafty cowshed, with nothing but thin soup every day, even the smallest ailment could turn into a terminal disease. You planned to have your high school graduate wife bring them medicine and take the money to invest in this future tycoon. At the very least, you'd have a tutor for when the college entrance exam was restored. Early the next morning before dawn, you opened your eyes as soon as you woke up. You quietly got out of bed, walked to the small bed, carefully picked up your daughter, placed her gently beside your wife, and tucked the little quilt in carefully. After cooking breakfast for your wife, you closed the door from the outside and set off on your journey. Today was market day, although it was still early. There were already quite a few pedestrians on the road. In this year, in the countryside, if a family could have a 28-inch bicycle, the conditions would be considered quite good. Therefore, most people still had to rely on their two legs to walk. Relying on the memories of your previous life, you quickly found that relatively large traditional Chinese medicine shop. The middle-aged man with a square face saw the items you brought out, looked you up and down, then picked up that dendrobium and began to examine it very carefully. Seeing that this dendrobium was actually Zhulao wild dendrobium, with every stalk perfectly intact, he couldn't help but be surprised. He carefully placed the dendrobium on the counter and asked tentatively, "What price do you want to sell at?" Hearing him ask for a price, you weren't polite and directly quoted a number. You knew in your heart the other party would definitely bargain. And sure enough, as soon as the pharmacy manager heard your price, he knew what was what. He knew you weren't easy to fool. He glanced at your basket and invited you to the backyard. The two of you haggled in the backyard for nearly an hour. In the end, you sold him 2 stalks of dendrobium, 1 polygonum multiflorum, and some deer antler. You were quite satisfied with today's price, clutching 50 10-yuan bills. You left the pharmacy. With money in your pocket, you went to the state-owned mall. You wanted to buy a washing machine, but one question to the salesperson left you stunned. You slapped your forehead. Although washing machines existed now, they were rare. Wang Xuanzhu led a delicate young girl through the door. Fourth brother's wife. This is Li Tiantian, a youth who came down from the city. She'll be staying at your house from now on. Tell fourth brother to clear out a room for her. Lin Qingshu was momentarily stunned. With a young girl suddenly added to the family, how could these 3 small mudrooms accommodate them? The couple lived in one. The main room was for eating, and the other was piled with odds and ends. Where was there space for her to stay? Village chief, he's not at home, I can't make the decision. Wang Xuanju's face was piled with wrinkles as he laughed, waving his hand at Lin Qingshu and completely ignoring her words. He gave a few instructions to the youth beside him, turned on his heel and left. If it wasn't for the sake of that piece of meat that boy sent him, how could he possibly send such a delicate young maiden to his house? Among this batch of youths coming down, totaling over 20 people, mostly strong young men, he had arranged for this one delicate girl to be here. With a young couple living there, sending a girl was better than sending a boy. After all, when doing business at night, a girl was more convenient than a boy. There was nothing to slander, and no need to worry about a young, beautiful wife being eyed by someone. The abandoned Li Tiantian, carrying a canvas bag, looked at these 3 dilapidated mudhouses and felt miserable in her heart. The days ahead would probably be more agonizing than those of the other youths in the countryside. The family Hong Mei was assigned to seemed to live quite comfortably. A middle-aged couple with 3 kids, all dressed brightly. On the way here, she heard them say the man of the house she was assigned to was no good, drinking, gambling, and beating his wife, and the family was so poor the house was falling apart and they couldn't even start the stove. Before coming, she thought they were exaggerating, but now it seemed what they said wasn't exaggerated at all. This hostess was wearing ragged, ill-fitting clothes, but she was tender and beautiful, with features as exquisite as if they came from a painting, not looking like a country person at all. Lin Qingshu sensed that gaze scrutinizing her. She looked down at herself in her patched old clothes, then at the girl in front of her wearing a trendy Dacron dress, white socks and small leather shoes, looking bright and beautiful. She pretended not to notice the scrutinizing look and said, "Take a seat first. That room is messy and full of clutter. We have to wait for my man to come back before we can clear a space for you." After saying that, she turned into the house and brought out a thermos to pour a bowl of water for the guest. Li Tiantian nodded somewhat awkwardly and sat on the stool in the yard. She calculated in her heart that she had to find a way to get a job back in the city quickly. She didn't want to stay in this broken place for a single extra day, especially living in the house of a local ruffian. She'd have to be careful later not to let that ruffian take advantage of her. Lin Qingshu originally intended to just have a casual bite for lunch, but now that a new youth had arrived, she had to roll up her sleeves and start preparing a meal. Li Tiantian thought since she was going to live here, she couldn't eat and stay for free, so she washed her hands and went to the kitchen to help. "Sister-in-law, how about I start the stove?" As she spoke, she entered the kitchen but was stunned. The dilapidated kitchen was actually kept clean and tidy, and there was such a large piece of meat hanging from the roof beam. Who said this family was so poor they couldn't even start the stove? If they couldn't start the stove, how could they have meat, and such a big piece at that? Lin Qingshu was kneading dough and looked up at Li Tiantian's words. "I don't need help. If you're bored, just help me watch the child in the yard." Li Tiantian nodded and left the kitchen, coming to the small bed to look at the baby. Lying there, who was as fair as a porcelain doll. Her appearance was very lovable. She leaned over to tease the child, wondering. This hostess was about the same age as her, and so fair and beautiful, why did she marry so early? How could she have taken a liking to such an incompetent man, a local ruffian at that? Could she have been forced by that ruffian to marry him? At this thought, Li Tiantian felt a wave of fear. The more she thought, the more scared she got, wondering if she should go to the village chief's house and beg him to change her location, even if it were poorer, as long as the man of that house was honest. In the kitchen, Lin Qingshu was busy cooking, unaware of the drama playing out in the mind of the youth outside. Before long, a bowl of steaming noodles was ready. Lin Qingshu carried the noodles out and called, "Comrade, come have a bowl of noodles first." Li Tiantian snapped out of it, staring at the bowl of noodles with oil on top and dazed for a moment. She hurriedly said, "My name is Li Tiantian. Sister-in-law, you can just call me Tiantian from now on." Lin Qingshu nodded and didn't say much else. Around 4 p.m., a tractor rumbled into the village and stopped at your door according to the path you pointed out. Lin Qingshu, who was shucking corn in the yard, suddenly heard movement and hurriedly put down her work. She stood up and walked to the door, just in time to see you jump nimbly off the tractor. Her heart was filled with uncertainty. Why did he come back on this noisy tractor? Before she could ask, the tractor driver shouted, "Young man, can your house fit all this stuff?" As he spoke, he went from the front of the vehicle to the back, moving the television set bit by bit toward the edge, afraid of damaging it. You stepped up and hoisted the TV off the vehicle, grinning at the driver. There will be plenty of space later. Lin Qingju, standing nearby, was terrified by the scene and asked, dazed, "Did you buy all of this?" Her voice was full of disbelief. How much money and how many vouchers would all this plus a TV cost? Seeing your wife's fair and beautiful face with eyes staring blankly, you stepped forward and touched her cheek. You knew in your heart she was just worried about the money, but you didn't care about this small amount at all. You just wanted her to enjoy life with you and never suffer again. You whispered into Lin Qingshu's ear, "I'll tell you the details later. Stand aside for now so you don't get hit. I'll unload the things first." Lin Qingshu listened to your words and moved aside like a puppet, watching as item after item was unloaded from the vehicle, piling up like a small mountain. Her heart was full of regret. If she had known, she would have taken the child and gone to the city with you. How much money did this cost? How could he be so reckless with money? Where did the money and vouchers come from? What kind of regular family could afford a TV? The electricity bill alone would be a lot. What a spendthrift. Meanwhile, Li Tiantian, standing in the corner holding the baby, stared straight at the tall, broad-shouldered and long-legged young man. This was the village ruffian? She originally thought you were ugly and crude, but she never imagined you would be so handsome with deep features and a masculine look. In all her life, she had rarely seen such a handsome man. Her heart was thumping wildly. Li Tiantian finally understood why a woman as beautiful as Lin Qingshu had married so early. Turns out this man was even better looking than Wang Xinggang in the movies. Once the unloading was finished, you pulled 2 yuan from your pocket and handed them to the driver. The driver took the money, waved, and drove the tractor away. You began moving things into the yard. You wouldn't even let your wife help, making her sit and rest, and you didn't even notice there was a strange woman in the house. Zhao Zhenjing heard the news and rushed over. Seeing so much stuff piled at his brother's door, he was stunned. Where did this lazy fellow get so much money to buy all this? His house was so poor it was falling apart, and there was nothing to sell. Could he have sold the child? At this thought, Zhao Zhenjing couldn't help but quicken his pace. Reaching the door, he saw the little niece in the arms of the female youth and felt relieved. Zhao Zhenjing didn't say a word, keeping his head down to help move the items into the yard. Staring at that heavy iron block, once plugged in, pictures and sounds would come out, like a group of ants fighting on it. Very lively, just like watching a movie. He circled it a few times in curiosity, too embarrassed to touch it. He heard this thing was precious and cost several hundred yuan. This was the television city people often talked about. He never imagined his own brother would actually bring one back, the only one in the whole village. Once the items were settled, Zhao Zhenjing pulled you to the yard gate and asked where you got all this money. You calmly patted your chest and said these were all from hunting and selling the prey at the black market. You didn't tell your brother about the dendrobium, not because you didn't trust him, but because it grew on cliffs. Even if you told him, he couldn't help, and if the news leaked, it would cut off your source of wealth. When it got warmer next spring, you'd lead your brothers up the mountain to find some good spots and tell them the tricks. After that, it would be up to their own luck. Zhao Zhenjing wanted to advise you to just farm properly, but looking at his brother, he saw a glimmer in your eyes, a shrewdness and depth he hadn't seen before. It was as if you were a different person, making him, the eldest brother, feel like he didn't quite recognize you. Thinking it was rare for his brother to come over, you told him about your plan to build a house, asking him to help oversee it, and offering him 1 yuan a day in wages. Zhao Zhenjing took a puff of his cigarette and said, "As long as you don't start trouble, I'll do it for free. Why would I need wages? But building a house is no joke. It costs a fortune. Brother, I have the money, and I'll pay the wages as agreed. Even biological brothers should keep clear accounts. Please help me find a skilled master and use better materials. Let's strive to move into the new house before winter." Zhao Zhenjing nodded, thinking fourth brother just wanted to repair those 3 grass huts. Who would have thought he was so bold as to want to build 2 stories? The reason you handed all these matters to your brother was that you were busy yourself. You were calculating that you had to harvest all the dendrobium before winter. If you encountered more wild medicine like Polygonum multiflorum, you could sell it for money too. If you could bump into a sick deer and get some antler or deer whip, that would be a huge bargain. Seeing it was still early, the brothers agreed to find Wang Xuanju. In the era of a planned economy, buying bricks to build a house also required an authorization slip. Wang Xuanju, the village chief, had absolute power in these years. You sent a pack of Dakian men and slipped him 1 yuan, successfully getting the slip to buy bricks. With the slip, you headed straight to the commune's brickyard to order the bricks for the house. Zhao Zhenxing was puzzled. How thick a wall was 4th brother planning to build to order so many bricks? He told him you wanted 2 stories. Zhao Zhenxing watched as you pulled out 2 10-yuan bills without even blinking and handed them to the brickyard owner. Zhao Zhenxing's mouth twitched in pain for the money. Hearing you say the rest would be settled when the bricks were all delivered home, his eyes widened. It was unbelievable. Those were 10-yuan bills. Not scrap paper. You just carried them in your pocket like that. Weren't you afraid of losing them? Zhao Zhenxing discovered that his brother, who used to be like a rotten gambler, now had a lot of style in front of outsiders, looking more like a leader than the brickyard director. Standing there, he had a natural authority. If he changed into a blue cloth coat without patches, people would believe he was the son of some leader. If it weren't for the grime still on his neck and the scars from past brawls on his hands, Zhao Zhenxing would have doubted if 4th brother had been secretly swapped. On the way home, Zhao Zhenxing was floating in a daze. 4th brother was successful now, but why did it always feel strange? Close to home, you pulled 5 10-yuan bills from your breast pocket and handed them over. Brother, except for the timber, please help me arrange all the other materials. Zhao Zhenxing reached out to take them, then felt his hands were a bit dirty. He rubbed them on his hem before taking the money. He carefully tucked the money into his inner pocket, terrified of losing it. Zhao Zhenxing said to you sincerely, "With so much money, since you trust your big brother, I will definitely handle the matter beautifully for you." You nodded. What was there to distrust about your own brother, if it weren't for big brother and big sister-in-law looking out for her? Given the grievances my wife suffered in her past life, the daughter might not even have been born. She would have been lost through my own reckless behavior. In the Zhao family's main room, Lin Qingshu was tidying up the things bought from 10 kilometers away. She found a square scarf from the cabinet and carefully draped it over the television, terrified that a speck of dust would get it dirty. If it were up to her. Why buy this thing? The village has frequent power outages and needs an antenna. When there's no signal, the screen is full of static. But seeing your enthusiastic look, she couldn't bring herself to complain about you wasting money. She discovered you bought things for her and the daughter again. Sweaters, pants, and leather shoes for her. Plus several sets of small clothes for the little one. Why is this man wasting money again? Which family buys new clothes every day? She still hadn't worn the coat you bought for her in town last time, as she was reluctant to use it, yet here you were buying her more. But seeing that you kept the mother and daughter in mind, Lin Qingshu was still very happy. She picked up the light, thick cotton quilt, preparing to put it in the chest, and couldn't help but shed a tear. This was even better than the 10-year-old new cotton quilt she brought when she married over. After tidying up most of the things, Lin Qingshu noticed that this man actually hadn't bought anything for himself. Yet his shirt was patch upon patch, and his shoes even had a hole in them. Li Tiantian was helping hold the daughter, staring longingly at those new clothes, her heart itching like a cat seeing a fish. That V-neck sweater was the most popular style in the city. She had wanted to buy one when she visited the mall, but her parents wouldn't agree to spend nearly half a month's salary on a sweater. Looking at the clothes she wanted but couldn't afford appearing here, and more than one piece at that, Li Tiantian felt a wave of envy, jealousy, and hate. Lin Qingshu's man was a talent in appearance, and he was exceptionally willing to spend money on his wife, not to mention he knew how to cherish her. When moving things just now, he wouldn't let her lift a finger, terrified she would get tired, cherishing her like his own eyeballs. How could the village spread rumors that such a good man is a lone wolf scoundrel? It's simply nonsense. You walked in from outside with vigorous strides. As soon as you entered, you saw a strange young woman holding the child, standing there smiling at your wife. Is this your friend? After Li Tiantian noticed your gaze, her eyelids lowered as she didn't dare meet your eyes. Although she considered herself a city person and looked down on these mudlegs, since this man returned dusty on a tractor, even though she had been standing right there, his eyes and heart were only on the little sister-in-law. A whole living person was standing here, and he actually didn't spare her a single glance from beginning to end. Lin Qingsu was busy with her work, and hearing your question, she finally realized there was an extra person in the house. That female youth had been silent, and she had been so focused on tidying the things you bought that she had forgotten her entirely. Lin Qingxi quickly took the child from Li Tiantian's arms with an apologetic look and said to you, "This is a youth from the countryside brought over by the team leader. He said she wants to stay at our house temporarily. Look, should we tidy up the west room and let her stay there?" Her words carried a tone of consultation. Although you said she was the head of the house, she still didn't dare make the decision alone, fearing she would do something wrong. As soon as you heard an outsider wanted to live in the house, your brow furrowed slightly. You were unwilling to have a stranger mess up the private life between you and your wife. But when you saw the expectant look in your wife's eyes, the rejection at the tip of your tongue simply wouldn't come out, fearing she would think you had ignored her wishes. You didn't say a word, first pulling your wife into the inner room, taking off your outer coat, and then pulling the remaining money from selling the dendrobium out of a hidden pocket and handing it to her. Then you took the child from Lin Qingshu's arms, teasing her while telling her about your plan to build a new house. Lin Qingshu took the money from your hand, looking at the brand new 10 yuan bills, feeling it was unbelievable. After buying so many things, there was actually this much money left? Are 2 stalks of dendrobium, 1 polygonum multiflorum, and that deer antler and deer whip worth this much? When you mentioned the idea of building a house, Lin Qingshu quickly put the money away, carefully hiding it securely under your eager gaze, and then fell into a brief silence. If they didn't build a house, based on the money earned these 2 times, it would be enough for the 3 of them to live a stable life with plenty of food and clothing for several years. But if they really built a house, this money might be far from enough, and they might end up with a pile of debt. Her brother's side of the family had helped them a lot over the past 2 years, and now they had their own children to raise. How could she have the face to ask for more money? While Lin Qingshu was pondering, you seemed to see through her thoughts and suddenly gave her fair cheek a kiss. "Wife, don't worry about the money. I'm here. You just rest well at home and don't get tired." The sudden soft and warm touch on her cheek made Lin Qingshu's face turn red instantly. She gave you a glare with her beautiful eyes and whispered a reminder. "What are you doing? There are people outside. Aren't you ashamed?" Your skin was as thick as a copper wall. You just looked at Lin Wingshu with a grin. In your past life, you were worth a fortune. What kind of occasion hadn't you seen? As you spoke, you leaned down again and took a light bite of Lin Qingshu's red, full lips. Looking at your wife's fair, pink-tinted cheeks, your heart melted. "You're already a mother. Why are you still so shy?" You stopped teasing her and returned to the main topic, saying, "Big brother will order the materials tomorrow. If he doesn't have enough money and asks you for it, don't forget to give it to him." Lin Qingshu nodded silently, but she felt somewhat disgusted in her heart. She remembered what the neighbors said about Big Brother and second sister-in-law, and seeing Big Brother made her feel uncomfortable. You keenly saw that your wife's expression wasn't right, leaned in close to her cheek and asked, "What's wrong, wife? If there's anything, don't keep it bottled up inside." Lin Qingshu thought for a bit and shook her head, saying nothing. Seeing your wife didn't want to speak, you didn't press further. Over there, Li Tiantian was standing in the main room and vaguely heard Lin Qingshu's reminder that there were people outside. Her face turned as red as a monkey's bottom. She stepped lightly into the middle of the yard to breathe the fresh air and, as if possessed, stopped her footsteps to find the captain to change her residence. The man of this house didn't seem as unbearable as the villagers outside rumored. Just now, when the sister-in-law was organizing the items, she saw clearly while holding the child that most of those items were for household use, plus clothes for the child and sister-in-law. Strangely, she didn't see anything for the man himself. While Li Tiantian was standing in the yard in a daze, the little girl in your arms had already fallen into a sweet sleep. Her little face was as exquisite as carved jade with a serene look. You turned gently and placed the sleeping little princess softly on the bed, carefully pulling up the quilt. Then Lin Qingshu walked out from the room and said to Li Tianhan, "You'll have to bear with it tonight and make do. There are a lot of things piled in the west room, and Big Brother might not be able to finish tidying them all at once. Hearing Lin Qingshu's words, Li Tiantian turned her head and saw her cheeks were flushed, which made her think of the conversation between the couple in the room she just vaguely overheard. Her face felt a bit hot, and she quickly avoided her gaze. "It's no trouble. Then I'll have to bother you and Big Brother," Li Tiantian said hurriedly. Lin Qingshu shook her head with a smile at Li Tiantian and said, "As long as you don't despise our house for being poor." As she spoke, she leaned down, wanting to move the daughter's small wooden bed to her own east room. Seeing this, you rushed over to help. "Wife, let me move it. Be careful not to strain your waist." Lin Qingshu smiled and turned to the west room, wanting to help tidy up. "You, who are working shirtless, were repeatedly asked by your wife until you finally put on a white tank top. Those muscular arms were exposed, exuding a sense of strength. The tank top covered your broad back and the various scratch marks of different depths. You were completely unaware of why your wife made you wear a tank top, so you just shouldered a few bamboo rakes, intending to move them to the yard. Just after a few moments of work, you saw your wife coming in with her sleeves rolled up. You immediately spoke to stop her. "Wife, you don't need to lend a hand here. There's a lot of dust. Go wait in the yard." As you spoke, seeing Lin Qingshu wouldn't listen, you got anxious, put down the fence in your hand, and pushed her out. You were so pained in your heart. There was so much dust. How could you let her in to help? If it weren't for the thought that during the upcoming house building, there would be a group of men coming in and out of the house, you wouldn't have kept this female youth in the house. But then again, keeping Li Tiantian had benefits. When you went up the mountain to hunt or harvest dendrobium, she could accompany your wife to chat and be a companion. Li Tiantian saw you push Lin Qingshu out and couldn't help but cover her mouth and tease with a smile. "Sister-in-law, Big Brother really cherishes you." Hearing Li Tiantian's words, a blush appeared on Lin Qingshu's face, and she smiled somewhat shyly without responding. This man really has changed. As long as he's home, he won't let her touch any work. Even the hot water for her sponge bath at night is boiled and brought to her in the room. These days truly felt like being carefully protected. It was just too good, to the point it felt a bit unreal, even causing her to be a bit on edge. Lin Qingshu was terrified that your interest would fade, and you'd return to how you were before, making her live every day with a heart full of anxiety. Her spirit was now in a state of high tension every day, greedily hoping these good days could last a bit longer. So she was exceptionally careful in her words and actions, fearing she would make you unhappy. During the meal, seeing you hand the white flour bun to her while you took large bites of the coarse grain bun. Clearly, the one who complained that coarse grain buns weren't tasty was you, and the one who asked her to make white flour buns was also you. But once they were made, you wouldn't eat a single bite, leaving them all for her. In fact, she could eat anything as long as you lived a stable life and stopped going out to mess around. That would be enough. To this day, Lin Qingshu hadn't figured out why you suddenly became so good. Before, it wasn't that he hadn't done messy things while drunk, then apologized to her while sober and knelt on the ground to make solemn vows. Every time after his drunken rages, he would indeed behave for a while. But that would only last 2 or 3 days before he returned to his original form and went out to mess around again. She had never seen him like he was these few days, cooking, boiling water, coaxing the child, and even buying all the clothes and shoes for the child. Lin Qingshu's heart was like a clear mirror, constantly reminding herself to stay sober and not fall headfirst into this sweet whirlpool. What if the dream ends, and reality is different from now? But you didn't know the twists and turns in your wife's heart. Seeing the sky turn dark, you finally finished clearing the west room. That room was a mud and tile house that had been used for storage and was uninhabited. The newspapers on the wall were as rotten as spiderwebs and crumbled at a touch. Although it had been cleaned, there was still a lot of dust inside. You nimbly used wooden boards to set up a small room, completing the task your wife assigned. Lin Qingshu saw you walk out, drenched in sweat, and quickly picked up a towel to hand it to you. "Quick, wipe yourself. Dinner will be ready soon." You didn't reach out. Your tall and straight body leaned down slightly, bringing your large, sharp, handsome face close to your wife. Exhaling hot breath, as you said, "Wife, will you wipe it for me?" Hearing your words, Lin Qingshu subconsciously glanced at Li Tiantian, who was carrying things into the house. After she went in, she stood on her tiptoes and raised her hand to wipe the sweat from your forehead, not forgetting to remind you. "There's an outsider in the house. From now on, when you get up in the morning to go to the toilet, don't go shirtless anymore. Wear your large underwear so the young girl doesn't see and feel ashamed." Your dark, bright eyes stared at the wife who was so close. Seeing how carefully she wiped and listening to her remind you of these trivial things made your heart feel warm. Although you felt it was a bit awkward not to be able to go shirtless in your own home, seeing your wife's serious look, you curled your lips and gave a light, dragonfly touching the water kiss on Lin Qingshu's red lips and readily agreed. "I'll listen to you." Lin Qingshu was made red-faced and red-eared by this sudden small act of intimacy. It would be one thing if just the two of them were home, but now there was an unmarried young girl in the house. "Really, you have no shame." Lin Qingshu with a red face said to you, "Don't dawdle, go wash your hands and eat," and turned to go to the kitchen. You watched the back of your wife fleeing in panic and grinned. A satisfied smile spread across your handsome face. You walked to the well, pulled up a bucket of cold water and washed your face with a splash. You had worked up a sweat and felt uncomfortably sticky. Looking around and seeing you were alone in the yard, you pulled off the tank top and poured the cold water from the bucket directly over your head. It felt incredibly cool. Unexpectedly, Li Tiantian happened to come out of the room and saw this scene, looking at the shirtless man with his back to her. Showing a robust build with well-proportioned muscles and clear lines, and those few scratch marks on top, Li Tiantian's cheeks felt hot, and she turned back into the room in shame. The mud house wasn't soundproof, and it was pitch black with dust everywhere. Li Tiantian couldn't stay another day. Lin Qingshu heard the splashing water and walked out carrying the dishes. She immediately saw you shirtless and dripping wet, as if you'd just been fished out of the water. Instantly, a fire rose in her heart. She put the dish on the stone table in the yard, stepped forward, and grabbed your arm to pull you into the house, complaining while pulling. "In such cold weather, what if you get sick?" You let your wife pull you into the house. Hearing her complaining words, your heart felt warm, knowing she was sincerely worried about you. Once inside the inner room, Lin Qingshu picked up a small blanket used for the child, stood on her tiptoes, and carefully wiped the water from your head. She was so focused she didn't even blink, and her mouth didn't forget to scold you. "Hurry up and lower your head." She completely didn't notice you were staring at her with a smile that looked worthless. Hearing your wife's words, you quickly spread your long legs and obediently lowered your head for her to wipe. "Wife, put on your new clothes tomorrow. I want to see." As soon as these words came out, Lin Qingshu's movements paused slightly, and she didn't say a word. Seeing the hair was mostly dry, she went behind you and wiped the water droplets off your back inch by inch. Looking at the marks on your back, her face felt hot. She clearly wasn't like this before. Thinking of these things, Lin Qingshu's heart rate became a mess. She threw the small blanket into your arms and said, "You wipe the front yourself. After you're clean, change your pants and come out for dinner." Lin Qingshu pulled back the curtain and came out, bumping into Li Tiantian coming out of the west room. The two smiled at each other, and in a tacit understanding, neither spoke. 3 mud and tile rooms, a place the size of a palm. What was said in the east room could be heard clearly in the west room. Li Tiantian couldn't sit or stand, feeling uncomfortable all over. What if she were caught in the middle at night? You changed into a pair of pants, put on a gray shirt, and walked out with large strides. You sat on the stone stool next to your wife, scanning the stone table. The scrambled eggs from the morning were almost untouched, and not one of the 8 pieces of meat was missing. You frowned and looked at your wife. You didn't eat breakfast. Lin Qingshu had just picked up her chopsticks and looked up to see your dark face and furrowed brow. Her heart skipped a beat, and her hand shook, dropping the chopsticks on the ground with a clatter. She was instantly crushed. Had he shown his true colors so soon? She thought he could last longer this time. The dream woke up so fast. She put down the other chopstick, avoided your gaze, took a deep breath, and said with a calm voice, "I ate half a bun and 2 pieces of egg." But her hands were tightly clutching her old outer garment, and her whole body was trembling. The sound of the chopsticks hitting the floor made you snap out of it. You realized something was wrong and looked closely. Lin Qingshu's eyes were completely red and wet, like an apricot blossom hit by rain. Your heart tightened, and you immediately panicked. You were just pained that she was reluctant to eat. You didn't expect your tone to be too heavy and scare her. You reached out wanting to hug her but were dodged. You panicked even more. A man over 6 feet tall squatted in front of his wife with a face full of panic. "Wife, I was just a bit anxious just now. I truly didn't mean to snap at you." Your tone softened. Lin Qingshu's grievances couldn't be held back anymore, and her tears fell with a pitter-patter. She was truly terrified just now, thinking you had turned back into that violent demon who would hit her. You were pained to death, picked her up by the waist, and walked quickly into the east room. Li Tiantian had just sat on the stone stool with a face full of confusion. What exactly happened just now? She was the only one left in the yard. In the room, you looked at the person in your arms with heartache. Her eyes were red from crying, and her delicate nose was flushed. It felt like a knife twisting in your heart as you lowered your head to her eyelids and said softly, "Wife, I'm sorry. I was really wrong. I was just afraid you'd be reluctant to eat, and in my rush, I snapped at you. I'm busy outside all day and can't always watch you eat." In a moment of anxiety, my tone got heavy. Lin Qing's heart gradually felt a bit better, and she also felt she was a bit much just now. Being pampered and protected by him recently made her delicate. Now that things were out in the open, she felt even more embarrassed. Her fair fingers tightly gripped the shirt at your chest, her eyelids lowered, and she didn't say a single word while biting her lower lip. At this moment, you said, without any warning, "Wife, what's this?" Following the direction of your finger, Lin Qingshu realized that she must have leaked milk. Before she could respond, you said, "The crucian carp and tofu soup and deer meat I brewed recently are effective. Is our daughter getting enough to eat lately?" Lin Qingshu's fair face turned red instantly, like a ripe persimmon. She broke free from your arms and turned her back to you. "You get out first!" Her voice was trembling. These few days, she drank crucian carp soup every day. She didn't know if it was truly effective, but these 2 days the child had been breastfeeding and hadn't had milk powder. But even so, there was still a lot of milk. It was painfully swollen during the day. Last night, this shameless man had eaten some, so it wasn't as uncomfortable during the day, but it actually leaked again. With a flushed face and head down, she unbuttoned her clothes, completely unaware that you were staring straight at her movements. Looking on with eager anticipation, Lin Qingshu had just removed her outer garment when she realized this shameless man was staring at her. She was instantly shamed and annoyed. "What are you doing? Hurry out, I want to change." You had no intention of going out. Instead, you moved your head a few inches closer. "Wife, the child is asleep. It's uncomfortable like this. Let me." After saying that, you didn't give Lin Qingshu any chance to react. Li Tiantian sat on the stone stool outside with her chin in her hand. It was dark, and the stars and moon had come out. But the couple still hadn't come out. She didn't dare rush in to look and could only wait. After a long time, the two came out of the room. Li Tiantian saw the sister-in-law's eyes were wet. Her cheeks were flying red, and her lips were as red as fresh fruit. She must have been coaxed well, right? Lin Qingshu saw Li Tiantian staring at her, and thought of what just happened. Her face felt incredibly hot. She sat down, picked up a pair of chopsticks, and handed them to Li Tiantian. "Eat!" Then handed another pair to the man beside her. After you sat down, you didn't give Li Tiantian a single glance throughout. You put a fine flour bun into your wife's hand while you took large bites of a coarse grain bun, thinking in your heart to find time to go to the reservoir and get a few crucian carp to nourish your wife. How could Lin Qingshu know what the man was thinking? She was worried Li Tiantian would feel uncomfortable and handed over a fine flour bun. "Eat. Don't be formal. Treat this like your own home." Li Tiantian took a small bite, her heart filled with doubt. Was this family poor or rich? If you say they're poor, they eat fine flour buns, and the dishes are scrambled eggs and meat. These conditions wouldn't be inferior in the city either. In the morning, the captain's house was eating black cornbread with pickled radishes. If you say they're well off, they live in 3 mud houses, and besides the TV bought today, there isn't even a decent piece of furniture. The bed she slept on was just a few wooden boards put together. When she made the bed, she was afraid it would collapse if she turned over at night. Oh right, she heard him tell the tractor driver during the day that he wanted to build a house. Wouldn't this old house be demolished then? When the time comes, there won't even be a place to live. Then why did he keep her? It could be seen that in this big brother's eyes, besides the little sister-in-law, there was no room for anyone else. He clearly didn't like her living here, while she was thinking wildly. The sound of the child crying came from the room. The next second, you got up and let Lin Qingshu continue eating while you strode into the room, turned on the light, and picked up the daughter who had woken up in her small bed. Lin Qingshu put down her chopsticks and reached out to take her, but you avoided it. "You eat first? I'm not hungry yet. I'll eat later." Lin Qingshu naturally knew he said he wasn't hungry because he wanted her to eat first, coming back from outside and then being busy clearing clutter. How could he not be hungry? But she didn't expose him, picked up her chopsticks and continued to eat. Li Tiantian lowered her eyes and took small bites of the bun, stealing glances at the way this couple interacted and subconsciously comparing it to her own home. Her two brothers would return from work and almost never touch the children. If the children cried, the sister-in-laws were busy, holding the child in one hand while struggling to eat with the other. But this big brother before her was walking back and forth in the yard holding the child, coaxing her. She thought it was unbelievable. Lin Qingshu quickly finished her meal and took the child from the man's arms back to the room. Once she left, Li Tiantian secretly raised her eyes to look at the young man opposite. She saw him taking large bites of the bun and eating eggs. His handsome face had no expression, exuding coldness and detachment. This was a completely different face from when the sister-in-law was there. Li Tiantian felt a bit intimidated, sitting restlessly, and said falteringly, "Big brother, I'm full." She tidied up the dishes and carried them into the kitchen, quickly washed them and went back to the West room, not daring to come out again. It was completely dark. You sat alone in the yard, finished the remaining 4 coarse grain buns, and drank the noodle soup before feeling full. Then you boiled a pot of hot water and carried the basin back to the room. "Wife, remember to wipe your body. I'm going to the toilet." You put the basin on the stand and walked out. Lin Qingshu closed the door, took off her clothes, and bathed with hot water. Just after finishing and putting on her clothes, she vaguely heard movement behind the house. She thought she had misheard, but the next second a man's voice came from outside. "Good, sister, are you bathing?" Lin Qingshu's hair stood on end, and she screamed loudly. Outside, you had just pulled up your waistband, and hearing the scream, you rushed out, catching the person who lunged into your arms head-on. Holding her tightly and lowering your gaze, you asked, "What's wrong?" Lin Qingshu's arms tightly hugged your waist. "Behind the house. Someone was there just now." You raised your dark eyes to look outside the yard wall, and indeed, saw a head quickly running away. In an instant, your deep eyes were tinted with terrifying anger. You pulled back your gaze, looked at the person in your arms who was only wearing undergarments, picked her up by the waist and put her on the bed. Coming out from the bedroom, you instructed Li Tiantian, who was standing at the west room door, "Help me watch her. I'm going out for a bit." You didn't say more, walking out of the yard with long legs, your tall and straight figure disappearing into the night. At Airlazy's house at the east end of the village, the neighbors heard Airlazy's miserable screams and the muffled sound of fists hitting a body. They listened with trembling hearts. They all knew you were a reckless soul and a ruthless person at heart. They didn't know how Airlazy had provoked you, but hearing the movement, you were being heavy-handed. They were truly afraid the man would be beaten to death. Fourth brother, I was wrong. I went to see the youth, Li Tiantian, but I truly didn't see anything. Hearing Airlazy beg for mercy, you directly dislocated his jaw. What nonsense are you talking? Weren't you hungry for meat and went to eat meat? Fourth brother, I was wrong. Airlazy didn't even have the strength to crawl up and kneel. He was truly afraid of being beaten to death by you. For a moment, you really wanted to ruin him, but thinking of Lin Qingshu and your daughter, your hands weren't that ruthless. Lin Qingshu lay on the bed. After an unknown amount of time, she heard the splashing of water in the courtyard and knew you were back. Taking a cold shower. After 10 minutes, she heard the door open and close. In the darkness, you thought she was asleep and stepped lightly into the room. Just as you were about to grope your way into bed, a voice came from the mattress. "You're back?" Lin Qingshu reached out and turned on the light. The room brightened. You stopped moving and saw the person on the bed propping her head up with one hand, her jet black hair scattered over her snowy white shoulders and neck. Your gaze darkened. You climbed onto the bed, reached out to turn off the light, and in the darkness, you pulled her waist, free of any stray fat, into your arms. You patted her back. "It's fine. Let's go to sleep, wife." Before you returned, she hadn't dared to sleep. She was afraid you wouldn't know your own strength and would beat someone to death. And she feared the village gossip. She was terrified, shrinking into your arms like a small cat, her cheek pressed against your firm, burning chest, listening to the strong, rhythmic heartbeat until she slowly stopped sobbing. She didn't dare cry loudly for fear of waking your daughter. Looking at your wife like this, you only felt you had hit them too lightly. You thought that with your notorious reputation, the village thugs wouldn't dare. But, unexpectedly, someone still moved with crooked intentions. However, after today, those who had such thoughts should settle down. Seeing the fatigue on the man's face and thinking about how he had been leaving early and returning late recently, digging for dendrobium to sell and bringing the money to her to protect and coax her, she knew he was truly tired. In the darkness, Lin Qingshu cried until she was exhausted and fell into a dazed sleep. Hearing the steady breathing of the person beside you, you finally breathed a sigh of relief. The next day, Lin Qingshu was awakened from her dreams by voices outside. In the courtyard, sister-in-law Zhao added a large handful of white sugar to the boiled water and poured it for the workers one by one. In these times, sugar was a rarity. Usually no family could bear to buy it. Cao Fengji drank a bowl of sugar water, leaned in close to sister-in-law Zhao, and whispered, "Sister-in-law? Yesterday, I thought I heard your younger brother's wife shouting at home." Sister-in-law Zhao put down the kettle and looked at the gossipy Cao Fengji. "Oh? Your house is 2 miles away from Shaoxi's, and you heard it? What? Were you bored last night and squatted under the young couple's window to eavesdrop?" Cao Fengji smiled and didn't respond. Thinking of last night when she heard you beat Lazy from the East End half dead and broke one of his legs, it happened that the city wife wasn't settling down, so she guessed this wife must have cheated behind your back. She couldn't suppress the urge to talk about it. Sister-in-law Zhao couldn't be bothered with her, carrying the kettle to pour water for others. She came to your side, gave you a look, and whispered, "Go check on Qingshu. Usually she's awake by now. Don't let her get sick from the scare." You, who were moving bricks, stopped your work. When you got up in the morning, she was indeed still sleeping, but it was already 10 a.m. You lifted the curtain and entered the bedroom. Lin Qingshu woke up the moment you opened the door. You instinctively pulled her into your arms and whispered into her ear, "Since you're awake, change your clothes first. I'll bring the food in for you to eat in a bit." Your voice carried a hint of raspiness. The curtains were still drawn, and the noise outside was intense. Lin Qingshu couldn't help but ask, "What's going on in the yard? It's so noisy." You smiled and replied, "Renovating the courtyard wall. It's a mess. Wife, don't come out yet. There's still work to do outside." "Then why aren't you letting me go?" You didn't loosen your grip. Instead, it tightened. You said to her, "Kiss me once and I'll let go. Stop messing around and let go. There are people everywhere outside." "Where am I messing around? You're my wife. I asked you to kiss me once and you're unwilling. Do you not like me anymore?" Your tone carried a hint of aggrieved aggression. Lin Qingshu wanted to explain but ultimately said nothing. She leaned forward and lightly pecked your cheek. "There, let me go." Having been kissed by her, a bright light flashed in your handsome eyes. You happily cupped her small face and kissed her back. "It's boring staying in the room. I want to go out and help." You rejected the idea without a thought. "If you're bored, I'll have sister-in-law come in and talk to you later." Lin Qingshu knew there was no hope of helping out. Watching you step out and open the door, she went back to the bedroom bored to play with your daughter. Because many people came to help, the courtyard wall was finished by 4 p.m. that day. The 2-meter-high wall was covered with glass shards. Generally, without a ladder, it would be difficult to climb a 2-meter wall, let alone one covered in glass. Building the courtyard wall before the house was a first in the area. Behind your house, Cao Fengji's brother smiled. "Last night I went out to use the toilet and saw Lazy from the Chao family sneaking out of Lin Qingshu's room." "I'm afraid both of them did that," Zheng Hongxie exclaimed. "No way! If it's true, Lin Qingshu is too shameless." The two in-laws muttered and winked, their gazes toward Lin Qingshu turning frivolous. You, who had been staring at them, saw this scene, and every word reached your ears. "These two women really need a lesson. My uncle has these 2 daughters-in-law, and they turn out to be this kind of trash? They claim to come to help, but clearly they came to mooch sugar water." You noticed? Cao Fengji even brought a tea mug, and her pockets were bulging. It seemed she had stuffed them with snacks meant for the helpers. You pondered how to deal with Cao Fengji and Zhang Hongxie. You had to settle it once and for all to avoid future trouble. After dinner, you sauntered over to your uncle Wang Dashan's house. Wang Dashan and his 2 sons lived together without dividing the household. Everyone was surprised to see you. "Jingguo, have you eaten?" Uncle Wang Dashan asked. Aunt Liu Shutin shoveled a mouthful of rice into her mouth. Seeing you walk toward her, she didn't think much of it. Step by step, you approached Cao Fengji and grabbed her hair. Your actions stunned everyone present. With Cao Fengji's scream, they finally reacted. "Wang," he stood up abruptly. "Zheng Guo, have you gone crazy?" You gave a cold smile. "Have I gone crazy?" "Ask your wife." Cao Fengji never expected the news to reach your ears so quickly. You began listing her faults. After listening, Li Shuqin and Wang Dashan's faces turned black. What kind of daughter-in-law did we marry? She's a disaster. Usually, they feared their son would follow your bad example and warned him to stay away. Yet this woman dared to proactively make things up about others. Cao Fengji cursed you in her heart, but didn't know how to explain. Zhang Hongxia stood up. Is there some misunderstanding here? Zhang Guo, let go first. Cao Fengji is your elder cousin-in-law after all. Look at this pair of birds of a feather. Zhang Hongxia, you're no good either. Sit down. Zhang Hongxia was embarrassed and looked at her man Wang Yong, who remained silent, clearly unwilling to get involved in this mess. You raised your hand and slapped Cao Fengji's face. I'll teach you to talk nonsense. I'll break your mouth. Cao Fengji was dazed. She never thought you'd dare. No one in the Wang family stopped you. You gave her 6 slaps before letting go. Cao Fengji saw stars and couldn't even stand steadily. Stumbling toward Wang, only to be pushed away harshly by her own husband. Wang Dashan said slowly, You were asking for it. You deserve it. Liu Shuqing glared at Cao Fengji with intense hatred. Cao Fengji, are you mindless? Or can you not stand to see Zhang Guo's couple doing well? How dare you say such things? It was clearly a move to sow discord. Even after being hit, no one felt sorry for her. I didn't say those things. Aside from denying it to the death, Cao Fengji had no other way out. You didn't say those things? Do you dare to swear? If you lied, may your whole family die. May your parents die a horrible death. May your children die a horrible death. Cao Fengji was too green. She was no match for the cunning you. 2 sentences sealed her mouth shut. She felt guilty and stammered, unable to speak. Everyone understood what had happened. You looked at everyone. I'm putting the word out today. If I hear anyone spreading gossip or trying to drive a wedge between me and my wife, don't blame me for being heartless. At that time, if I beat them to death or disable them, I won't be responsible. After saying that, you kicked Cao Fengji twice. Wang, he stepped forward and delivered a barrage of punches and kicks to his own wife. Cao Fengji's face was swollen, and she begged for mercy, but still, no one dared to intervene. You didn't leave, clearly still angry. Whoever intervened would be the unlucky one. After a while, Liu Shuqin sighed. That's enough. If she's injured, we have to spend money on medical treatment. Wang. He raised his hand and delivered a final slap to Cao Fengji's face, causing the corner of her mouth to bleed. You snorted. I'll teach you to have a foul mouth. If you do it again, I'll sew your mouth shut. Leaving these words behind, you strode away. Inside the house, there was no other sound except for Cao Fengji's crying. Having dealt with Cao Fengji, you felt physically and mentally pleased, and went home happily to find your wife. Seeing you leave, Wang Dashan gave Liu Shuqin a look, signaling her to take the 2 daughters-in-law to the kitchen to clean up. In the center of the main room, smoking, Wang Dashan tapped the table with his pipe. Wang He, Wang Yang, you 2 keep a tight rein on your wives. If there's gossip about Xiaoxi's family in the village, even I can't protect you. We can't afford to mess with Xiaoxi. Lately, I heard he's turned over a new leaf. But from what I see, he's actually become more of a rogue. The brothers Wang He and Wang Yang lowered their heads, not daring to make a sound. With a creak, the old wooden door was pushed open. Cao Fengji hurriedly closed her eyes, not knowing what to do. They had been married for several months, and her belly showed no movement. Her father-in-law, mother-in-law, and husband had just watched her get beaten without lifting a finger. What kind of people were they? He came in and said nothing, sitting by the edge of the bed in deep thought, his mind chaotic. This younger cousin was not simple. His father meant for him not to provoke him. But his wife was quite beautiful. He was unwilling to let her go and send her back to her parents' home. Their eyes met, but neither spoke. After a while, Cao Fengji crawled up. I was wrong. Wang. He was somewhat surprised. He didn't expect her to ever admit a mistake. Seeing him silent, Cao Fengji said, From now on I will live properly with you, and I promise not to step out of the door. Wang. He stared at her for a few moments, turned and left. Cao Fengji watched his back, biting her lip, feeling at a loss. Should she be more proactive? Today's beating definitely couldn't be for nothing. One early morning, Lin Qingshu divided the risen dough into 5 small pieces and put them in the pan to fry until golden brown on both sides. Just as she was about to pinch a small piece to taste, she was startled by an embrace from behind. A very tall person had to bend down to hold her completely in his arms. Your chin rested in the crook of her neck. Lin Qingshu shivered, but relaxed when she smelled the familiar scent. She turned her head in a daze and found you staring at the food in her hand. She smiled naturally and fed the pancake into your mouth. How does it taste? Delicious! Your smile was sincere and natural. Wife, actually, you don't need to get up so early to cook for me. You should sleep longer with the child. You're going hunting. It's cold in the mountains. Eating something hot in the morning is better. Thinking back to how you had gone out recently with just some dry rations, Lin Qingshu naturally wanted to do something for you. I'm heading out. After eating breakfast, you put on your tall boots, carried the baskets on a shoulder pole, and headed toward the mountain. After walking for about 2 hours, you successfully found that dendrobium plant and got busy with your tools. By noon, the dendrobium was all harvested. Seeing that it was still early, you didn't go down the mountain immediately but looked around for dead wood to try your luck. Sure enough, you found a big catch. You strode over. Are those mushrooms? No. Where are there such bright red shriveled mushrooms? Those were 4 Lingji mushrooms of varying sizes. This trip to the mountain was worth it. Why hadn't you noticed that these deep mountains were filled with treasures before? Putting down the basket, you broke some leafy grass to line it, then used a sharp blade to cut the Lingji and put them inside, covering them with a thick layer of grass. Just as you were about to leave, out of the corner of your eye, you caught an inconspicuous small hole next to an oak tree. Scattered fine soil and footprints surrounded the entrance. Those were traces left by a badger. This looks like a badger hole. Badger meat is delicious and could nourish your wife's body, and badger oil is a precious medicinal material. However, badgers are cunning. Catching one directly is by no means easy. You decided to try your luck with the smoking method. Searching your space, you found a small handful of dried chili peppers, carefully stuffing the peppers and dry wood into the hole. The fire flickered, and thick smoke rose, filling the badger hole with a pungent smell. You pushed to the side and waited patiently. When the badger sensed the smoke, it would instinctively look for an exit to escape, and you had already set up a net at the entrance, just waiting for the badger to fall into it. You were taking a gamble. Badgers are good at digging, and their designs are ingenious, often with multiple exits. You remembered Animal World, saying some badger holes even have over 130 exits. Time passed, minute by minute. The forest was silent, with occasional bird calls. You stared intently at the hole, your palms sweating slightly. After waiting for about half an hour with no movement, you were just about to give up and put out the fire with wet branches when there was movement at the hole. A furry badger head poked out, eyes flashing with terror in the smoke. Then, its whole body squeezed out and dashed toward the net. You were quick and pulled the net rope, firmly trapping the badger. This badger was estimated to be around 20 pounds. With a 1/6 probability of the right exit, catching one like this made you very satisfied. After taking water from the space to ensure the fire was completely out, you turned to head down the mountain. Meanwhile, at home, some villagers knew you had bought a television and came to the door out of curiosity to see what the city people's television looked like. Throughout the day, your house was bustling as people came and went. During this time, some villagers saw Zhao Zhenjing having a pile of construction materials delivered. Upon inquiring and learning you were going to build a house, they all showed expressions of surprise. They said all sorts of things, all believing your house wouldn't get built, thinking you didn't have that much money, and secretly discussing behind your back that you didn't know how to live. Spending so much money to buy a metal box was useless, a waste of money and electricity. Lin Qingshu was exhausted just dealing with the villagers who came to watch TV. She felt today was even more bustling than when she got married. Just as she was about to sit down and rest, she saw you coming back with the baskets. Her eyes immediately lit up, and she greeted you holding the child. "Why are you back so early today?" While speaking, she saw your bamboo basket was stuffed with grass leaves. Over these few times, just by looking at the grass in your basket, she guessed there was something inside. She was somewhat puzzled. How could your luck be so good? Things like dendrobium are hard to come by, yet you could bring some back every time you went to the mountain. Lin Qingshu was wearing a brand new red sweater, which highlighted her delicate and fair skin, making you daze for a moment. After you reached her, you leaned down to kiss her cheek. "Qingshu!" She blushed and dodged. Lin Qingshu felt you were being improper, wanting to kiss her at any moment during the day. Tian and sister-in-law are both here. Only then did you notice a few villagers still in the room. You looked at your wife in confusion. Lin Qingshu saw your question and explained. The folks all wanted to see what the TV looks like. Luckily, sister-in-law came over to help deal with them. You nodded, wanting to take the child from her arms, but seeing your clothes were a bit dirty, you carried the basket into the kitchen. To your wife who followed you in, you leaned down and whispered a few instructions into her ear. Lin Qingshu looked at the basket and nodded. Understood. Although she didn't know how many things you had brought back and that you were going to the city again early tomorrow morning, she didn't ask too much. There were still so many outsiders at home. He actually dared to lean in so close. This guy within reach had changed too much recently. Sensing your wife was secretly sizing you up, your smile widened to your ears. Mwah, mwah. You kissed each of your wife's palm-sized cheeks. Wife, eat well today. You didn't just say it. Your hands weren't honest either, lingering on her waist. How could it be so thin? It felt like it wasn't even 16 inches. Wife, even when I'm not home to supervise you, you have to eat well. You're too thin. Caught by the waist. Lin Qingshu, holding the child, glared at you as if to blame. Just as she was about to say you were acting out regardless of the setting, she heard sister-in-law shouting outside, "Since Lao Si is back, Qing, I'll be heading back. Lao Zhao is coming back from the field soon." As she spoke, she walked toward the door. Lin Qingshu quickly called out, "Sister-in-law, wait a second." She handed the daughter to you, left the kitchen, and entered the east room, coming out with a bag of rock sugar and stuffing it into sister-in-law's hand. She was afraid you might speak up to stop her. Rock sugar was a rarity she couldn't bear to eat herself, but if not for sister-in-law's help, life for the mother and daughter would have been even harder. Today, hearing many villagers came to watch the excitement, sister-in-law didn't even visit her flowers. If she hadn't come, how could Lin Qingshu have handled so many people alone? In the past, they were poor and always took advantage of sister-in-law. Now that they were better off, she wanted to repay her. Even as in-laws, one shouldn't always take advantage. Sister-in-law, Zhengguo bought this. Take it back for the kids to eat. Sister-in-law was stunned looking at the half-pound of rock sugar. She quickly pushed it back. No, keep it for Niu. Sugar water is for treating distinguished guests. Ordinary families can't afford it. If a new bride brings this when visiting her parents' home, it would bring so much pride to her family. The two went back and forth for several rounds until the bag was about to tear. Only then did sister-in-law embarrassedly take the sugar and go home. Lin Qingshu was afraid you would blame her for taking initiative. She stammered in explanation. Zhengguo, it's all thanks to sister-in-law coming to help. There were too many people just now. I was so busy my head was spinning and I almost forgot to eat. I gave the sugar to her. Don't be angry, and definitely don't be a rogue and go get it back. Looking at your wife's trembling little manner, you felt as if a hand were squeezing your heart. It was breaking. Your wife still couldn't trust you, always afraid of saying the wrong thing and being hit or scolded. You really had brought this on yourself. When you didn't speak, Lin Qingshu became even more terrified, lowering her head like she had done something wrong. Zhengguo, I won't do it again. Don't be angry. You held your daughter with one hand and pulled your wife into your arms with the other. Some things needed to be explained clearly to her. Misunderstandings must never last overnight. Otherwise, they will accumulate. For a couple, the worst thing is not talking properly. Without communication, everything is over. You patted her back, your chin rubbing her hair, and said in a very gentle tone, "Wife, I already said you're the head of the household. You manage the money, do whatever you want. You have the final say. It's just a bag of sugar. If you want more, we'll buy it tomorrow. You don't need to care so much about my attitude. I unconditionally support any decision you make." At first, Lin Feng thought you were being spiteful, but you said it again, and it didn't seem faked. Only then did she finally believe it. Heaven knew she hadn't dared to breathe just now, fearing this man would flip his lid. Seeing her breathing slowly stabilize, you felt relieved. It seemed you should have a heart-to-heart with your wife every night. You thought of taking her to the city to relax, but knew she definitely wouldn't be willing, fearing that once in the city, you'd turn around and sell the daughter. But you felt it was a good time to take her out. Wife, want to go for a stroll with me at the foot of the mountain? I'll catch a quail for you to feast on. Lin Xiao wanted to go. It wasn't that she was greedy for quail, but recently you wouldn't let her go to the fields to earn work points, telling her to stay home, recover her health, and look after the baby. She had gone to work the second day after giving birth. Back then, you didn't pity her, but now you did. She also didn't know what benefit you had given Wang Xuanju. Both workers from your home weren't going to the fields, and Wang Chuanzhu wasn't coming to urge them. Seeing your wife clearly moved, but still hesitating, her gaze wavering toward those people in the yard, knowing she was worried that if you both went out, the things at home wouldn't be safe, you laughed. It's fine, wait a second. After speaking, you took the child out of the kitchen. No one knew what you said to them, but everyone in the main room came out. You even drove Li Tiantian out. Li Tiantian actually really wanted to follow this family of 3 to the foot of the mountain. She heard there were tigers on the mountain, and none of the youth dared to go near. But seeing she wasn't welcome, she could only wander around the village. On the way, you found your wife glancing at you from time to time, hesitating to speak. You stopped and looked at her expectantly. Lin Qingshu gathered her courage. Zheng Guo, can I go back to my parents' house tomorrow? After being married for so long, the man beside her finally acted like a human, knowing how to earn money for the household and care for his wife and daughter. She wanted to return home to ease her mother's heart, so she wouldn't worry about her bad marriage anymore. You thought your wife had been mentally preparing for something major. Since it was this, you agreed. Holding your daughter with one hand and your wife's hand with the other. Tomorrow, I'll go back to your parents' house with you. Wait for me at home. Calculating it, you had taken quite a bit of money from your mother-in-law. Tomorrow you'd go to the city to sell the dendrobium, shouwu, and some venison. It should be enough to pay back the money, and you'd buy some gifts for her. Lin Jingshu never imagined the man would say such a thing. It was a pleasant surprise. She couldn't help but nod and smile. Not long after, you brought her to a lake where wild ducks lived. You stopped. This is the spot! In earlier years, a dozen naughty kids had drowned in this lake. The village rumored there were water monkeys inside, and it was very eerie. So people generally bypassed it and didn't dare approach. You didn't believe in that. You took off your shirt to cushion the grass for your wife and child to sit and wait, not forgetting to sprinkle realgar and mugwort powder to repel insects. Lin Qingshu pushed aside the weeds in front of her, looking at the lake reflecting the blue sky, white clouds, and surrounding forest. Her eyes lit up. The quack-quack of wild ducks came from the bushes. She couldn't help but ask excitedly, "Was the wild duck you got last time caught here?" You nodded. "There should be wild duck eggs. It's the season for them to lay eggs." As you pushed through weeds taller than a person, you walked toward the duck calls. Before you got close, the ducks sensed movement and flew away with flapping wings. Lin Qingshu sheepishly rubbed her nose. "Ayaya, the ducks all ran away." You were just there to let her relax. "It's fine. You rest, I'll go look." You sent her back and searched the bushes, sure enough finding many nests built with straw and down, with gray-green duck eggs lying inside. Quite a few. You picked a few and came back to show her. With empty hands. Lin Qingshu was worried about how to bring them back. 4 hands could only carry a dozen at most, and there were so many they couldn't take. For someone used to being thrifty, it was a pity. She stood on tiptoe to scan the area and saw many golden willow trees. She hurriedly handed the daughter to you. "Hold the daughter for me. I have a way." She took out a small knife to cut the willows. Once you understood her intent, you put the daughter on a tree branch and also took out a knife to help. "Wife, I'll cut them myself. You're not used to it and might hurt yourself. Hold the daughter and wait." Your movements were extremely fast, and soon a pile of willows was gathered. Finding a flat spot and kicking off the green leaves, Lin Qingshu started weaving. You could only stand aside and watch, unable to help. Soon she had woven the bottom of a basket. Suddenly remembering something, she looked at the sky. "Are you hungry?" You shook your head. Lin Qingshu rubbed her belly in embarrassment. "But I'm a bit hungry." "You wait! I'll go hunt and roast a bird for you." "No need!" Lin Qingshu took 2 steamed buns from her cloth bag. "I brought buns. We can eat them after heating." "You eat some too." You glanced at the bag and nodded slowly. Lin Qingshu's eyes curved into crescents as she cut grass by the lake to start a small fire, putting the buns on the fire to heat. After letting you watch the fire, she went aside to weave the basket, not resting for a moment. She was fast. Just as the smell of roasted buns emerged, the basket was finished. She showed it off in front of you. "Look, is it pretty?" "It's beautiful. My wife is so skillful." You looked up, took the buns down, and handed them to her. "Eat!" Lin Qingshu put down the basket and washed her hands in the lake water. The two sat on a withered tree by the lake, eating the buns bite by bite under the mountain breeze and autumn sun. After eating, you got up, picked up the basket, and went into the bushes alone to pick duck eggs. This forest had no visitors for years, so the ducks had few natural enemies and bred well. In the time it took for Lin Qingshu to eat, you had picked a whole basket, and it looked like you could pick 2 more. Lin Qingshu didn't get greedy. That's enough. You wait here, I'll go further in and see if I can get other game. You dived into the forest. Holding the child, Lin Qingshu stared at the man in the distance, seeing his head pop out from time to time as he moved carefully on the ground. While he was crouching in the grass, her heart was also in her throat. With such deep grass, would there be snakes? What if he was bitten? The more she thought, the more she regretted. The wait became long, and she became anxious. When he poked his head out, she called out anxiously toward the bushes. "Come back quickly! I won't eat quail! I won't eat anymore!" Because the distance was too far, you didn't hear her and dived back into the brush. Lin Qingshu became even more restless, holding the child, picking up your shirt from the ground and clutching it, standing at the foot of the mountain staring intently. Because you brought your wife and were only at the foot of the mountain, you didn't use a shotgun, but a slingshot. This was no ordinary item. Its frame was made of heated and bent steel, polished and adjusted countless times. And the string was special ox tendon. It felt heavy in your hand. Your eyes were sharp as an eagle's, searching for a target in the sky. Finally, in the last glow of the sunset, a wild goose slowly flew into sight. "Found you!" You took a deep breath, steadied your mind, and slowly raised the slingshot. Its range was limited and the goose flew high, but you had a way. A 3-shot burst. The first stone flew into the air. The second followed and hit the first, and the third immediately hit the previous 2, carrying the sound of breaking air and chasing the figure about to disappear into the sky. Finally, under the impact of the latter 2, the first stone accurately hit the goose's wing. The goose's body shook violently and lost balance, spiraling in the air before falling helplessly. An indescribable excitement and pride surged in your heart. You gripped the slingshot, following the goose with your gaze, until it landed steadily on the grass nearby. As you were carrying the goose down, you saw your wife holding the child and hurrying up the mountain. Seeing this, your heart jumped to your throat. The mountain road was very slippery. "Dangerous! Don't come up!" The sudden voice startled Lin Qingshu into stopping. Her voice trembled as she shouted, "Come down quickly! I won't eat quail! I'll never eat it again!" Toward the end, her eyes were red. She had waited by the bushes for so long with no movement. Heaven knew how scared she was at that moment. Thinking back to what would happen if he had an accident in the mountains, she didn't dare imagine. You also noticed something was wrong, and had no more mood for hunting. "I'm coming out now. Don't move." You hurried down. Carrying the goose, you strode in front of her. "What's wrong? Is it cold? Let's go home." Lin Qingshu said nothing, turned, and walked ahead with the child. Her uneasy, fearful heart couldn't settle for a long time. You couldn't figure out why. She was suddenly unhappy. Things were fine when you left. You wanted to start a conversation several times, to ask for your shirt and pants back, but seeing her face pulled and not even looking at you, you had no choice but to follow her bare-chested in your shorts, carrying the goose and a basket of eggs. Passing Old Man Li's house, he was squatting on the threshold smoking. Seeing your wife walking ahead with the child, clutching your clothes, and then seeing you, 6 feet tall, following behind looking dejected as a frost-bitten eggplant. He had never noticed before. Outside he was a rogue like a crab, yet in front of his wife, he was so cowardly. As you both reached him, Old Man Li couldn't help teasing. "Yo, Lao Si, what's this? Lectured by the wife?" You craned your neck to peek at her face but only saw a section of her white neck and quickly looked away. You smiled at Old Man Li and didn't dare say a word. The two returned home one after another. You dropped the goose on the ground and rushed forward to open the gate. Once open, you sensibly stood aside. After she went in, you leaned down to pick up the goose and followed. Lin Qingshu was almost amused by your funny manner. She managed to hold it in, sat on a stool in the yard with the child, and only then realized she was still holding your shirt. He had followed her all the way back, bare-chested, suddenly remembering Old Man Li's teasing. Why had she started a spat with him and even forgotten to give him his clothes? She stole a glance at you and saw you weren't angry, silently drawing water. She stood up. "Don't use cold water. I'll boil some hot water for you." She tried to open the door with one hand holding the daughter, wanting to put her on the small bed. Hearing her take the initiative to talk, your spirits immediately rose. You turned around and saw her struggling with the lock. You quickly put down the basin and approached. Standing behind her, you took a key, inserted it, and opened the lock swiftly. Looking down at the wife in your proximity, your heart felt sweet. You look after the daughter, I'll take a shower and then cook for you. Lin Qingshu said nothing. Went in with the baby, put her on the small bed, tucked her in, and came out to see you splashing cold water over your bare, firm body. She had no temper left, thinking to let you freeze. She sat down, picked up your shirt from the stool, and waited. After you finished and went inside, she took your clothes to the well, drew water, and started scrubbing. While washing, she pondered, when going to the city tomorrow, should she take the daughter to the town first to pick 2 thicker sets of clothes for you? It was already autumn. You still wore that thin shirt every day and ran to the mountains before dawn. The temperature in the mountain dew was low. Didn't he know it was cold? Every time he came back, his pants and shirt were covered in mud, probably from crawling on the ground to dig for herbs. You rinsed quickly. Your tall, sturdy body was wet and carried a chill. You strode inside, grabbed her towel to rub the water off, changed into clean clothes, and came out to see today's clothes had been washed. Your heart felt warm. The feeling of someone washing your clothes was so good. Having a wife was so good. You processed the goose, deciding to stir-fry half and make soup with the other half for her. When Li Tiantian returned, she happened to see you processing a bird and her sister-in-law hanging up your clothes. This scene once again refreshed her perception of you. Just as Lin Qingshu set down her rice bowl, and Zhang from the East End came in a hurry. Her daughter was about to get married, and she needed someone literate to look at the dowry list, things like that. She thought of Lin Qingshu and came to call her to help. Li Tiantian didn't want to stay alone with a man to avoid village gossip, so she followed along to help. After eating, you began preparing the badger oil. It's a precious medicine for nourishing and repairing skin, effective for burns and frostbite. Seeing it was pitch black outside, you locked the door, held the baby, and walked across half the village to Aunt Zhang's house. Lin Qingshu saw you coming with the child and thought something was wrong. She quickly put down her work, came to your side, looked at the baby in your arms, and asked, "What's the matter?" You looked at your wife and smiled. "Just came to see you." You found a small stool and sat down. Aunt Zhang was sharp and saw the dynamic. She smiled until her eyes were gone. Quote, "You're Lao Si? He's afraid you'll be scared of the dark. He came specifically to pick you up." Listening to Aunt Zhang, Lin Qingshu glanced at the man on the stool. Was that really it? Aunt Zhang just loved to tease. How could that be taken seriously? Besides, even if he knew she was afraid of the dark, Tiantian was with her, right? He didn't need to make this long trip. Thinking this, she said to the man, "You sit and rest for a bit, I'm almost done." She went back to the table. You responded, and your eyes were as if fixed on her, staring straight at her every move. At this time, Zhang Tiejun sat beside you, munching on a cornbread. "Fourth brother, I think sister-in-law is really good, even prettier than Sister Hui. She's educated and cultured." Hearing this, you dazed for a moment before remembering who Zhang Hui was. You were puzzled. Why did Tiejun suddenly mention her, seeing you silent? Tiejun thought you still missed Zhang Hui. He became anxious. If that was the case, sister-in-law was truly wronged. Sister-in-law was sincere toward you. Even when the house was poor, she stayed with you. How deep was that sentiment? Thinking this, he advised, "Fourth brother, don't miss her anymore. Live properly with my sister-in-law. I heard Sister Hui found a boyfriend in the city, working in the kitchen of a state-owned restaurant. Now every time she comes back, her eyes are on top of her head." His tone was full of dissatisfaction. He looked down on Zhang Hui, thinking she was too arrogant because of her looks. Compared to your current wife, Zhang Hui was nowhere near. He dreamed of having your good fortune. To marry a fair and beautiful wife. Look at your wife's figure. She didn't look like someone who had given birth. She was as tender as a freshly picked cucumber. It truly made one's heart itch just looking at her. Who on earth was spreading rumors that you liked Zhang Hui? Someone like her isn't even fit to carry my shoes, whether in the past life or this one. When did I ever look at her? How did this groundless rumor spread throughout the village? If the wife heard this, wouldn't she misunderstand? You had been staring at her, and seeing she hadn't looked at you from start to finish made you feel even worse. At this distance, she couldn't have missed it. Does she really not care about me anymore? Your heart felt blocked. Toward Zhang Tiejun, you had no good face. When did I miss her? Which eye did you see me missing her? Zhang Tianjun was scared by your stance, quickly smiling. Fourth brother, I just said it casually. Why are you getting worked up? In his heart, he was very afraid of you. You were a famous rogue. Even dogs would bypass you. If you hadn't saved her, where would you have gotten such a good wife? Eyeing his cowardly look, you didn't want to waste words. Get lost. Zhang Tianjun carried his stool and ran. Their conversation was heard by Lin Qingshu in its entirety. Her knuckles, gripping the handle, turned white. No wonder he had changed recently. Turns out the person he kept in his heart has a new love. Only then did he plan to live properly with her and shut her mouth. A sense of desolation surged in her heart, making her feel terribly sad. On the way home, you carried the child, ignoring the light bulb, Li Tiantian nearby, and anxiously followed your wife to explain. Quote, Wife, don't listen to Zhang Tijun's foul mouth. I have nothing to do with that Zhang Wei. I don't look down on that kind of trash. My heart only holds you. Your tone was sincere, short of swearing to the heavens. Li Tiantian followed not far behind, her ears perked up like antennas. Seeing your tall frame beside your wife, your back bent like a shrimp, how afraid were you of her misunderstanding? Did this count as wife-controlled? Seeing her still ignoring you, your heart was up and down. You followed her home dejectedly. Once home, you gently put the child on the bed and went to the kitchen to boil water. Your tall body squatted by the stove, poking the fire with a stick and cursing. If you knew who was spreading rumors, you'd beat them until their own mother wouldn't recognize them. Lin Qingshu was sitting in the east room, sewing a winter coat for her daughter. Soon you came in with a steaming basin. You leaned down, put it by her feet, and then squatted down. Your large hand grasped her slender ankle, and the other made a move to take off her shoes. This made her stop her sewing. She looked at the man. What are you doing? She tried to pull her ankle back, but your strength was too much. Your rough, warm palm rubbed against her skin, making it itch. Why? She couldn't figure out what you were thinking. Without stopping, you took off her shoes. Quote, Wife, you've been tired all day. Soak your feet to relieve fatigue. Seeing she couldn't break free, Lin Qingshu gave up. Her eyes lowered, quietly watching the man. When her feet were pressed into the warm water, her heart also warmed up. Your changes were too great. Especially now, you actually took the initiative to wash her feet. In the past, she wouldn't even dream of it. Even when she was heavily pregnant, he hadn't done this. A sense of greed sprouted in her heart, indulging in the tenderness you brought. Zheng Guo, I'm not angry with you. As long as you don't fool around anymore, I'll be satisfied. Her fair fingers brushed into your short hair, softly stroking. You didn't say anything, silently rubbing her feet. When the water cooled, you took her feet out, put them on your thigh, and tucked them under your clothes to warm them. Then you reached for the towel on your shoulder, pulled her feet out from under your clothes, and dried them. Then you leaned over, picked her up, and put her on the bed. It's late. Don't work anymore. Be careful of your eyes. You also climbed into bed. Wife, I know I was a bastard before and did many wrong things. I don't beg for your immediate forgiveness, but you have to give me a chance to change. Believe me, okay? Your words made her stiff body gradually relax. Her breath was filled with your warm scent mixed with fresh hormones. After a long time, an almost inaudible understood came. You heard it. Early the next morning, before dawn, you set off for the town and caught the earliest bus to the city. This time, you didn't go to the same pharmacy to sell the dendrobium and antlers. Going to the same place too often might get you targeted. You chose another pharmacy. When the manager saw the goods, he could tell you were a young man who had dealt in large items recently. He led you into a private room. After checking the goods, everything was fine. Although he didn't know how you frequently had sources, he didn't suppress the price. You didn't expect it to go so smoothly. You counted the thick stack of bills, confirmed the amount, and put it in your pocket space before heading to the state-owned mall. You planned to pick some supplements for your mother-in-law, but unexpectedly met a great benefactor from your previous life, Secretary Wang. You just didn't know why he appeared in this small county town. Seeing him so young and in his prime brought back memories. In less than 10 years, this man would enter S-City and be promoted to the top position. You wanted to go say hello, but in this life, you hadn't met, and approaching him would be strange. You decided against it. If there was fate, you'd meet again in S-City. After all, you'd choose to develop there later. As you were leaving with your things, you heard a commotion near Secretary Wang. You stopped and walked over. The female clerk was grabbing the sleeve of Wang Xinjin's yellow jacket, shouting, Hey, I'm telling you, you're not being decent. If you broke something, Pay for it. You want to leave without paying? Wang Xinjun had turned around just now, and his clothes caught on a plum blossom watch on the counter, knocking it to the ground and breaking it. He was a scholar. Seeing the clerk's arrogant stance, he explained with a flushed face. Comrade, you misunderstand. I didn't want to run. I don't have enough money on me. The car is just outside. I'll go out, get the money, and bring it to you. This is my work ID. I'll leave it here with you. The clerk took the ID, looked at it with contempt, and threw it on the ground. Who are you fooling with a fake ID? Once you're out the door, where do I go to settle this? You want me to pay for it myself? You bent down and picked up the ID, handing it to Wang Xinjun. Your gaze moved to the clerk. How much? I'll pay for him. The clerk sized you up and laughed contemptuously. Do you know how much this costs? This country bumpkin actually dared to talk. A total of 127 yuan and 50 cents. Give me the money. You said nothing and took out a stack of bills from your pocket and handed them to her. Give the change. Looking at the money, she was surprised and counted it several times, then nodded. All right, comrade. Wait a moment. Seeing the excitement was over, the surrounding people dispersed. Wang Xinjun pushed his glasses, looking at the man a head taller than himself. Just now, with so many people watching, no one was willing to speak up for him. But this man settled it without a word. Looking at your clothes, you didn't seem wealthy. This money must not be a small amount for you. He was very grateful. Really, thank you for helping me out just now. I have money in the car is parked outside. Please come with me to get it. You nodded and followed him out, sure enough. Seeing a black sedan parked at the roadside, in this era, driving a sedan, it seemed the rumors of his deep background were true. Wang Xinjun opened the car door, took out a bag, counted the money, and handed it to you. Young brother, thanks again. Where are you going? I'll give you a lift. You took the money. You stuffed the money into your pocket without even counting the stacks. Thinking about all the things you were carrying, taking the bus was indeed not as convenient as taking his car, so you didn't stand on ceremony. Quote, then I'll trouble you. You said, giving your home address to Wang Xinjun before hopping into the passenger seat. On the way, two people who usually had zero overlap in their lives chatted away. There was no awkwardness at all. Instead, it was like old friends meeting after years, and the conversation flowed perfectly. Wang Xinjun had originally thought this young man was just ordinary, but during the chat he realized that wasn't the case at all. This person seemed deep and unpredictable. Despite being so young, he possessed a steadiness that shouldn't belong to his age. He felt that this man was not as simple as he appeared on the surface and couldn't help but think perhaps this person would achieve great things in the future. When the car reached the courtyard gate, you leaned forward and stepped out. Then, you took the supplements you bought for your mother-in-law out of the trunk. Bending over, you apologized to Wang Xinjun inside the car. Wang Xinjun flashed a smile and gave a hearty reply. It's nothing. Brother, we'll meet again if fate allows. Saying that, he glanced at the dilapidated earthen house behind you, turned the car around, and drove away. You carried the items into the house and immediately saw your wife holding a man's jacket. You walked forward, put the things on the table, and noticed her trying to hide the clothes behind her back. Being quick of eye and hand, you snatched the blue jacket from her. Grinning, you asked, Wife, did you buy this for me? As you spoke, you threw the jacket on. Seeing you put it on with the collar messy, Lin Xingshu subconsciously stepped forward, stood on her tiptoes, and raised her arms to straighten it for you. Once it was fixed, she stepped back a few paces and looked you up and down. The shoulder width and size were perfectly fitting, just like it was tailor-made. She hesitated for a moment before explaining, I saw the weather getting cold, so I took our daughter to town and bought you a new coat. Hearing this and seeing her darting eyes, you understood she lacked confidence and was worrying about this and that. Your heart was full of joy. This was the first time she had ever proactively bought clothes for you. You stepped forward, pulled her into your arms, and said, Thank you, wife. I really like this jacket. In the middle of speaking, you realized there was a huge light bulb in the room. Li Tiantian was holding the child, her eyes wide like copper bells. She was completely stunned, seeing you kiss your wife. A person as big as me is standing right here in the room. Did you really not see me again? Now that I've seen something I shouldn't, will I get styes in my eyes? When can I go back to the city to see my own brother? While her mind wandered, she squeezed out a fake smile with a blushing face, hugged the child, and hurried into the west room where she stayed. Lin Qingshu was left breathless by your kiss, leaning limply against your solid chest. Listening to your strong heartbeat, she asked softly. Have you eaten? Are you hungry? I'll cook for you. You led her into the east room to sleep, pressed her down onto a stool, and took out the cloth bag you kept close to your body. Keep this safe. Lin Qingshu looked at you, then lowered her gaze to open the bag which still carried your body heat. When she saw it was filled with great unity bills, she hurriedly clutched the bag and looked anxiously at the door. After confirming no one was outside, she stood up and asked in a low whisper, "Why is there so much?" Her voice carried a hint of fear. The money you brought back was more every time. Her heart was both joyful and terrified, truly fearing you were doing something bad behind her back. Seeing her cute expression, you couldn't help but laugh. This is just the beginning. There will only be more money in the future. You sighed. Current happiness felt like a dream. You squatted before her, meeting her eyes. All right, wife. If you feel uneasy, how about you come with me next time I go to the city? You can see for yourself where the money comes from, wouldn't that be fine? Hearing you say this, Lin Qingshu stared straight at you for a long while before finally nodding. Seeing her agree, you couldn't resist leaning in to kiss her forehead again. Then you said, all right, give me 200 yuan from the stacks. I'm gonna borrow a bicycle and take you back to your mother's house later. With that, you turned, lifted the curtain, and went out. After you left, Lin Qingshu looked at the thick stack of bills in her hand and scanned the room. She felt nowhere was safe to store it. Feeling uneasy, she hid in the room, alone, and checked several spots but felt none were secure. She rechecked her previous hiding spots, counted the amount, and after confirming everything was right, she started worrying again, not knowing exactly where would be safe to hide this sum of money. You didn't manage to borrow a bicycle. Returning to the courtyard, you plopped down on a stone stool, pulled a cigarette from your pocket, struck a match, and lit it. Taking a heavy drag, and slowly exhaling the smoke, you thought about how taking your wife and child out without a vehicle just wouldn't do. It didn't matter how far you walked on your own two legs, but you couldn't let your wife and child suffer with you. You had intended to borrow a bike to take them to her mother's, but you forgot how precious such things were in this era. People didn't even want to ride their own bikes usually, so how could they lend them to outsiders? You had been so focused on building a house and improving living conditions that you completely forgot about transportation for going out. After hiding the money, Lin Qingshu walked out of the room. Seeing you sitting in the yard smoking without a bicycle, she knew you hadn't borrowed one. She said, walking back is fine too. We always walked back before. You nodded and gave a muffled reply. You resolved to earn more money as quickly as possible. There were too many things the house needed. Around 2 p.m., Mother Lin was washing clothes in the yard. A neighbor rushed in, shouting excitedly, "Auntie, stop washing! I saw your daughter and son-in-law coming back." Most of the village knew exactly what kind of character her daughter had married. Hearing the neighbor, Mother Lin quickly stood up, wiped her hands on her apron, and hurried out. She wondered, what happened this time? Are they here to sponge off us again? Reaching the door, she saw her daughter and son-in-law walking toward the house. She didn't know why the two of them came together today and saw the son-in-law carrying large bags and small parcels. She went to meet them with an uneasy heart. First, she carefully looked over her daughter, seeing her in clean clothes with a smile on her tender, fair face, so different from her usual frowning look. The heart that had been in her throat finally settled down. Seeing the son-in-law carrying malted milk extract, canned fruit, a large piece of meat, a wild pheasant, and many duck eggs, she knew it must have cost a lot. Thinking of their situation, she couldn't help but grumble. Coming back to your own home. Why did you two bring so many things? As she spoke, she quickly took the child from her daughter's arms. Lin Qingshu had a faint smile on her face and didn't say a word. In the past, every visit was coming empty-handed and leaving full. This was the first time since they got married that they brought things to her mother's house. Although she didn't say anything along the way, the beauty in her heart was indescribable. You looked at your mother-in-law and called out respectfully, "Mom." Being called that made Mother Lin feel unnatural, and she squeezed out a smile, quickly ushering you into the house. Neighbors nearby also crowded around to watch the excitement. Seeing the changes in you two, they couldn't believe their eyes for a moment. Both husband and wife were good-looking, and now with this outfit, anyone who didn't know would think you were wealthy city folk visiting relatives in the countryside. But as neighbors, they knew best. Your home was penniless, and life was tight. Mother Lin led her daughter and son-in-law inside. She had seen the neighbors' surprised expressions clearly and felt proud. Finally, she could hold her head high. After her daughter married, she hadn't lived well and was often ridiculed. Now she finally felt vindicated, looking at her daughter's outfit. No longer the old, ill-fitting clothes, but brand new ones, from head to toe, even wearing rubber-soled shoes that looked high-grade. Looking at the son-in-law, he was no longer that impatient, stingy man from before. Now every movement showed steadiness, as if he were a different person. She almost didn't recognize him. No wonder her daughter said he had changed. It seemed he really had turned over a new leaf. After sitting down, Lin Qingshu asked, "Mom, where's my brother?" Mother Lin looked down at the baby in her arms, straightened the small clothes, and replied with a smile, "He took the kids to town, should be back soon." Just as she finished, Lin Mingliang returned, looking travel-worn as he pushed a 28-inch bicycle. On the way, he heard villagers say his sister had come with the child. He wasn't sure if you had messed up again. If it weren't for his sister, why would she have married this Zhao Zhengguo, who was penniless and had nothing but the title of savior? After parking the bike, he entered the room and saw you there. His face immediately darkened. Mother Lin, seeing her son's expression, knew what was happening and quickly tried to smooth things over. "Son, Zhengguo bought a bunch of things to see me!" Lin Mingliang glanced at the pile of miscellaneous items on the table and couldn't help but snort. He grabbed a stool and plopped down. He was fuming and wanted to scold his brother-in-law harshly, but feared upsetting his old mother. You knew the bastard things you had done in the past made your brother-in-law full of resentment toward you, so you didn't expect a friendly face. Thus, you weren't surprised by Lin Mingliang's behavior at all. At this time, Zhao Xiaoying came in holding a child. Seeing her own brother, a cloud of worry flashed in her eyes, but she still squeezed out a smile. She wasn't sure if her brother was here to sponge off them again. Every time he came, it was either to borrow money or items, making her unable to hold her head up at her in-laws' house. Although her husband never argued with her because of Zhengguo, that made her feel even more ashamed. She wanted to say that last time you even beat her husband over a money-borrowing issue, but she swallowed the words. Seeing the grievance in your third sister's eyes, you felt uneasy. You were well aware that for these past 2 years, your sister's life at her in-laws had been hard because of you. You remembered in the previous life, after your wife jumped into the river with your daughter, your family had cut ties with you. Only your third sister, when you were leaving, secretly stuffed 20 yuan and a few warm boiled eggs into your hand. Later, when you became successful, because your third sister was caught between her families, you didn't dare contact her. Later, hearing from a fellow villager that the sister and brother-in-law wanted to do a small business, you bought the storefront they liked and rented it to them at a bargain price. For a moment, the room fell silent. Lin Qingsu also felt the atmosphere was a bit off. For these 2 years, the family had indeed relied on her mother's family to barely survive. She felt her pocket and took out a stack of great Unity bills. Before, she didn't know what you wanted her to do with this money, but on the way you told her. This 200 yuan was to repay the debts owed to her mother and brother. Hearing this, Mother Lin was quite surprised. In the past, this guy's borrowing was like throwing a meat bun at a dog, gone and never coming back. She never thought he could repay the borrowed money. She only hoped he would cause fewer troubles. "Mom, Zhengguo asked me to give this to you," Lin Qingshu said as she tried to stuff the money into her mother's pocket. Mother Lin panicked when she saw so much money, quickly freeing her hands from the child to stuff the money back to her daughter. "Put it away. Why are you carrying so much money? What if you lose it?" Her tone carried a bit of reproach. You didn't expect the mother-in-law's reaction to be so big. You quickly spoke up, "Mom, you must take this money. I wasn't sensible before. From now on, I will live properly with Qing Qing. If you don't take this, I won't feel at peace." Mother Lin's pupils shrank slightly, not understanding what had happened in these few days that could make a person reform. She looked at her daughter, saw her smiling and gesturing for her to take the money, and then, with her heart in her mouth, she tucked the money away. "Mom will save this for you first. Whenever you need it, come to Mom anytime," Mother Lin said. Lin Mingliang looked at you, also completely puzzled. He felt suspicious. Then looking at his sister dressed so radiantly with light shining in her eyes, no longer looking lifeless, he thought, "Since sister said so, I'll trust you one more time." So he turned and told his wife, "Yanner, go get some side dishes for drinks." Hearing there would be drinking, Lin Qingshu immediately got anxious. "Brother, we have to go back later." With so much money left at home, she didn't feel safe with no one watching. Furthermore, She was terrified that if you drank too much, you would go on a drunken rampage again. Lin Mingliang waved his hand. It's fine, sister. We'll just have a little. It won't stop you from going home. Seeing she couldn't convince her brother, Lin Qingshu looked at you, hoping you wouldn't drink. Receiving his wife's signal, you grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. It's fine, wife. Put your heart at ease. I know my limit. Lin Qingshu felt a bit unhappy hearing that. She gave you a glare, took the nephew from her sister-in-law's arms, and sat aside in a huff, not saying another word. Zhao Xiaoyan got busy, setting up a table in the yard and bringing out the white liquor her husband had hidden. The two men didn't waste any words. They poured the liquor, clinked their bowls, and gulped it down in silence. Sitting in the main room, Lin Qingsu held her nephew, distracted and worriedly looking outside from time to time. Seeing the way her brother and you were drinking, she couldn't sit still. Mother Lin saw every move her daughter made.